Fly, my hawkmen! It's a decent film, but it's no Sex Lives of the Potato Men.
I won't have this namby-pamby, wishy-washy nonsense about not hitting people who deserve it. I cry a lot.
Gotta give him that huck too and spit on that thing. Pull the lever, Unc.
Can't do it. We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. It. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Oh my God, I knew it. I knew you were going to do something. I knew it. The way you said earlier, no, I have nothing planned for tonight, was just way too casual. And I was like, nice. I was like, he's got something planned. The hair, amazing.
Oh, did I specifically order Edward Cullen hair from Amazon specifically for this episode? You bet I did. Will my costumes hopefully get more and more outlandish? Quite possibly. Quite possibly.
I think so.
Oh. Well, Sam, thanks for hanging out today to talk about this show. This is going to be a fun one. This is going to be really interesting. And I have kind of an icebreaker question for you, Sam.
I'm ready.
So, picture yourself back in I don't know how long you've been married, but back in like the 2000s or whatever, when you're single, you're on a first date, and the night is kind of getting to the point where there's still like a lot of the night left. The night is young, as they say, and you've had like a drink in you, and you're trying to figure out, or you're trying to like be funny. It's getting to the point where you can be like a little bit more flirty and get to really the meat of who this other person is. What is your favorite like first date question that like gets you to open up a little bit more?
I don't want to be like lame, but truly the question is probably like, what's like your favorite TV show? What are some of your favorites, like TV shows that you rewatch over and over and over again? That's probably up there.
Okay.
What about you?
So my favorite question on a first date is, tell me something really embarrassing about yourself.
Ooh.
And I feel like it breaks the ice enough to like just kind of like we're both on the same playing field. Like, I'm gonna tell you something really embarrassing about me, you're gonna tell me something really embarrassing about you, and we'll both be able to laugh about it together. And I found that this particular icebreaker is almost like a 100% success rate as far as like leading to a pretty good time. Now, if I were to ask you that question, tell me the most embarrassing thing about yourself, or one of the most embarrassing things about yourself, what would you say?
Would it be like an embarrassing moment, or just like something
Not-
about myself that is embarrassing?
Yeah, not an embarrassing moment. I specifically word it so that it's like something that is like consistently embarrassing about you.
I would say like of how much of a nerd I am. It
Okay.
would be probably the honestest, like most honest, yet still embarrassing to myself. Yeah, would be like I'm a nerd. Like I just I want to keep learning things. I want to keep knowing things. Like I have to keep like cycling through things. I'm sort of a know-it-all, in a way. So
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
that's my embarrassing trait is just like, no, if you want to have a conversation about something, I definitely will already know about it and maybe know 10 more facts than you do.
That's fair. Yeah. That's funny because I'm like the opposite. I specifically on a first date, there are things I won't mention anything to do with like books or fantasy or the podcast. Like I do
Really?
not that I think the podcast is embarrassing, but I think like it leads to if because people always ask, "What's your podcast about?" Oh, well, we talk about all these like fantasy books and stuff, and I found that to be kind of a turnoff a lot of times.
I guess more I love fantasy novels. Like I if you don't like it, then all right. Like thanks for
No,
letting
for
me
sure.
know.
I think I have a slightly different approach. Like eventually, yes. Like if you are not cool with me being into like fantasy book, like it's a huge part of my life. Obviously, we're not gonna like work super well if you're like, oh my God, that's so like gross or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but that's something I bring up on like maybe like a second or third date, like after they get to know me a little bit more and
Mhm.
get to know like who I am like as a person. Um, what I bring up for my embarrassing thing, and I've done this a number of times, and it's always led like I don't think I've ever had one time where the girl has been like, "Ooh, gross" or whatever. I say I have watched every single episode of the Vampire Diaries. That's my embarrassing thing. And without fail, every single time it has led to at least a 20-minute conversation about the Vampire Diaries. Either like, oh, I couldn't get into that show. Like, why do you like it? Or I have too. Like, let's talk about the Vampire Diaries. And so,
It's like
and
one of those like
more.
backhanded things where like you could say it's like an embarrassing thing, but you also know it may do you like a lot of good. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's
And
a
it
great one, Spencer. That's so smart because, like you said, even if they haven't seen it, they at least know about it.
right.
And regardless, it's
Everybody
gonna
knows about the
spark,
Vampire Diaries.
yeah, it's going to spark a conversation. Oh,
Yeah.
that's really good. It's like one of those like backhanded compliments in a way where like
Hmm.
it doesn't matter like how you respond to this, it's sparking that conversation. So that's all that matters.
Correct.
Oh,
Right. Yeah.
very good, Spence. Very
Yeah.
good. I mean, if a guy
I've,
said that to me on a date, granted, I haven't been single in 15 years. But
sure.
hey, if I was single and I went on a date and that was brought up and he started saying, like, I've seen every episode of the Vampire Diaries, I immediately would be like, how long do you have for us to talk about this?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, more often than not, it's the latter. Usually the girl has seen at least like a season or two and has
Yeah.
something to like talk about. And it's done me a lot of favors, and it instantly opens the door to be like, all right, let's just get weird and wacky and talk about vampires.
Oh, that's great. I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Talk about vampires
So,
all day. It's probably my favorite supernatural being because in my mind, why wouldn't you want to be a vampire? I just like
right.
I want to live forever. I want to live forever.
Yeah, yeah. I have a fascination with vampire. I'll talk about that. I'll get through the rest of our intro real quick. Everybody, if you're joining us, obviously we are talking about the Vampire Diaries today. So come hang out and just be weird with us and talk about this show that is both cringy but also somehow really good. Like it's so weird. Like I should not like this show. Like from everything else that I've like talked about on the podcast, like there's no way that this show should work for me, but it kind of does, and we'll get
You
into
shocked
that.
me so much when we were trying to throw around ideas for, well, what can we do like for a stream? Spacey, hey.
Hey.
Where it was like, what's like not a book that we could do? And when I forgot how, I think I said, I was like, oh, I'm doing a rewatch of Vampire Diaries right now. And you were like, I've watched all, I was like,
What?
Has somebody like taken over his body? Like it was very just not Spencer to me. It really wasn't.
I'm telling you, it's this random thing I have in my back pocket that I bring out at opportune moments. I use it to my advantage.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody, we're talking about the Vampire Diaries today. We're gonna talk about it in its entirety. So if you're for some reason worried about being spoiled for the end of the show, then too bad. We're gonna talk about everything. But with
for quite a while, so
yeah, it's been around for a while, yeah. And it probably ends how you expect it to end. I'll just say that. Like it probably does. Like any way that you can think that the show potentially ends, you're probably right. So with that, our links to our socials and Patreon are down in the description, as is our like Discord, all that. Supporting us on Patreon helps us buy new equipment. This winter, I'm going to be buying new equipment for Gabe using the Patreon, so thank you guys so much. And then Patreon and what else? Linked in the description are 2 Vampire Diaries videos that are excellent. Sam and I were talking about them backstage. One of them is a Jenny Nicholson video. Most of you know her for her like super long videos she does where she picks like a topic and just goes really deep into it. And like she even dug out like the old Vampire Diaries like video game and stuff and like talked about all that.
Parts of the video. It was so ridiculous. I was like, this is real.
It's so funny. So yeah, obviously Jenny Nicholson is just a YouTube legend. She puts out like 2 videos a year and they're always like bangers. So anyway, I would recommend checking that out if you want some of the more like just weird, bizarre facts about the show that she just like digs up out of nowhere. But if you want like a really in-depth breakdown of the story and the characters and everything, down below we have linked Friendly Space Ninjas breakdown of the show, and it is incredible. I think it had like the video has like millions of views on it, like millions and millions of views on it, so it's pretty crazy. But he goes into like the story and like breaks down his thoughts like season by season. It's not quite a recap, but he does kind of recap it in his own way. He's mostly talking about his thoughts on the show. And then he goes character by character and he pulls out like interviews with some of the actors and they talk about how they felt about their character on the show. So yeah, check those out if you want, if you just want like a deep dive into some of this stuff. Like obviously they don't need my promotion because they have like millions upon millions of views and subscribers and everything. But for you guys, if you just want something really cool to watch, I would legitimately highly recommend either of those videos. So, okay, so let's talk about how we got into Vampire Diaries, and it's going to kind of lead into like what we think of vampires as the mythological being that you were kind of getting at earlier, because I do have some interesting thoughts on that. So Sam, why don't you talk about just like how you got into Vampire Diaries? Like were you watching it from the beginning?
Well, rewatching it from the beginning was just I was telling Spencer earlier, I've gotten really into these like adult paint by number kits lately, and I just needed something in the background that I knew had a ton of episodes in every season and a bunch of seasons. And so that was why I a month or two ago, probably 2 months ago, started my Vampire Diaries rewatch, because it was just a show I enjoyed once and it's streaming right now.
Did you watch it as it came out like back in the day?
I don't remember.
Oh,
I don't remember if I feel like I might have. There were a couple seasons out and I binged it, and then the show was still going on in a later season. I do not think I watched it from when it initially came out. I'm pretty sure I didn't. but I got into vampires much later in life and then became an obsession. It became one of my favorite genres to read about just because I'm secretly obsessed with living forever and not, dying. But I got really into this show. I got really, really into it. Probably around the same time I got into True Blood. That was another one of my really huge
Okay.
shows I loved. But I think the thing that I really like about Vampire Diaries and even True Blood is they don't stick to just vampires. They bring in all of those,
Right.
what's the right word? Like not mythological, but
Supernatural beings, yeah.
elements as well. And I just fell in love with it. And I'm a huge Damon stan. So I mean, I had to stop watching, but I definitely was not watching it from like when it first premiered. I definitely did not.
Yeah, okay.
What about you?
Yeah. I started it around season 3. It was before Elena got turned into a vampire, because I remember when that happened, like I was reading articles on it and stuff. Like I was up to date by the point that she got turned into a vampire. And yeah, I have a really interesting history with the Vampire Diaries, and I think it stemmed from my love of vampires. I became a fan of vampires before I ever saw the Vampire Diaries. And how that happened was, hopefully this won't be breaking news to too many people. I think I've told this story on the podcast before. But from the ages of like 16 to 25, I was heavily addicted to heroin. And that was like, it, I was going through all that. And at some point during that time, probably around like 18 or so, I had discovered these stories about vampires. And everything that I was like reading and watching and stuff, I was like, oh, this is heroin addiction. Like, this is straight up like you need the thing. If you don't have the thing, you feel terrible. And there's all these like we see it in the Vampire Diaries, all these like mood swings that the vampires go through depending on the situation. I'm like, that's what would happen if you were like heavily addicted to something and you like needed it. And the way that they like manipulate and treat people, and especially Stefan earlier on when he's like hiding his, like he just started drinking human blood again and he's like trying to hide it. I'm like, dude, that is like straight up. They actually did a really good job with that. Um, but yeah, it was this thing where it was this time in my life where it was also, when you get hooked on something like that, at least for me, there was nobody really there to explain what was happening like with your body, like physiologically. And like I remember the first time I woke up in the morning and I was like sick, like in withdrawal. I was like, what is happening? And I had no idea. And it was like the scariest day of my life. Um, and so shows like this, or like really any vampire media, they all kind of do it. The person wakes up as a vampire and they don't know what's going on. They don't understand why they need blood. They don't understand why they feel the way they do. And so a lot of that really, really resonated with me. And I kind of just like dug my heels into that kind of genre a lot. And that was around the time I read like Twilight a little bit. I was like, this isn't very good. And so then I started looking for other like vampire media. And I think what I was trying to find was True Blood. I think because I had like done one of those, like, this is back in the early days of Google. And I'm like, hey, like, what are some other like vampire like media that is like modern? And I think I had been looking for True Blood, but there's so many different shows and so many different books. You have all these names kind of jumbling around in your head, right? And so I think at the time it was on Netflix. And I was scrolling through Netflix and I found Vampire Diaries, and the names didn't mean anything to me at the time, but I was like, "Oh, this is that True Blood show." and so and so I started watching the Vampire Diaries. And I've still never seen True Blood. I really want to, because I know a lot of people love it.
I love it.
But yeah, it started this whole thing where I was like, I was watching Vampire Diaries, and it just fed that part of me that needed something to relate to.
Mhm.
And it was so good. It was my comfort show for years and years and years. And I remember, a season would end, and then I'd be like just rewatching these seasons like on my phone or whatever. And then I think I think by the time it got to like season 6, I don't think I've ever rewatched anything past 6. I think I saw all of those as they came out. And I remember being like, Sam, I was like, I was like 20, I was like 24 or 25 years old. And I remember I was like at my mom's house, and I was like, the uh the last season had just come out, and I didn't have any other way to watch it besides like at her house. And so I was like I was like 24 or 25, sitting in the living room with my mom
Yeah,
watching the final season of the Vampire
vampire
Diaries.
show. And at that point, it just makes absolutely no sense, essentially, either.
Yeah,
So somebody who
yeah,
hasn't watched any of it is like, "What are you watching? Are you
yeah.
okay?"
I know. My mom knew that I had been like watching the show, and she was like, whatever. But at that point, the only way I had to watch it was like at her
Yeah.
show, and so she had to like sit and watch it with me, and she's just like, I hate this. She's like,
Yeah.
I hate every single second of this. She's like,
Yeah.
the only reason I'm watching this with you is because you like really, really want to watch it. Um so
That's like my husband the last week or two, where he comes home from work. He's like, "What do you want to watch?" And I'm like, "I was watching the Vampire Diaries. That's what I want to watch." And he's like, "But
right.
you've seen it before." I'm like, "And
And
don't ask me what I want to watch when
yeah.
this is what I want to watch. I don't have a second place. It is my second place and third place and fourth place option. Okay, this is what I want to watch right now."
Oh man, that's so funny. Yeah, she was just like, I don't get it. I'm like, I know. I'm like, I don't even like in that final season, I'm like, I don't even like this season at all. I just have to know how it ends. Like, I just
Yes.
have to know, like, I understand, like, what you're seeing right now is very bad.
Yeah.
I just have to know. I
Yeah.
have to know.
I have
So,
to know, especially because it happens with Elena, and she only comes back at the very end for like a final
yeah,
season. You're like, I need to know. I need
right.
to know. But
Yeah,
I'm like you. I think the final 2 seasons I've only seen at most twice, but probably just like the one time I watched it through completely, because you just come to a point where you're like, okay,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, you kind of it's a little Stockholm syndrome,
Yeah.
right? Like, because genuinely, the first like 3 to 4 seasons are really, really good. Like, they're
Yeah.
actually like, I would consider them like good writing, good plot, good world building. Um, but it trickles in enough like cringy and like eye rolling moments to where you just kind of become accustomed to a certain level of
Mhm.
cringe. And then you keep going, and you keep forgiving more and more, because you're like, I used to love this show. And so you're like, I still like want to love it. And so I'm willing to
Yeah.
forgive more and more, until you get to that final season where you finally admit, like, God, this has gotten bad, but now I have to know how it ends.
Yes.
Um
You're
so
desensitized to the
yeah.
stupidity at that point. You're like, no, listen, like I've gone this far. I am going home stretch. Like, it is what it is, okay?
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, you're just like, I have to know how it ends. And like, I think the good thing about the show is that even during the bad parts, the characters are good all
Mhm.
throughout. Like, I think the characters are always good all throughout the show. Like,
Yeah.
and especially like when you look at with a show like this, and especially given CW's reputation, like this show originally aired on the CW.
Mhm.
Um, you're not really expecting much in the way of like plot and characters and even the acting. Like a lot of the actors that the CW gets are not like super good. But
It's
in
like a Lifetime movie. You know what I mean?
yeah, exactly.
You only
Yeah.
expect to watch.
That's such a good way to describe it, like a Lifetime movie. Just like you're there for the
The
yeah, exactly.
the shock factor.
Right. And yeah, I think what this show did so differently is and I don't know how much work went into the casting or whatever, but I think for the main cast, the side characters, they're kind of hit or miss. But for the main cast, the acting is extremely good. Like I think the main cast of actors is like very, very, very good actors. And I don't think they've really gotten much recognition beyond this show, and I think they should.
No, and I've also said that in addition to the Vampire Diaries, the originals and the Vampire Diaries
Yeah.
have the most beautiful people I've ever seen in my
Oh
life.
my God, yes.
Between the two shows, I'm like, you're hot, you're hot, you're hot. And I like both. So it is just a win for me watching either of these shows. I'm like, why are you all so beautiful? This doesn't make sense. Like, give me one person that is unattractive, please. Like, make me feel better, because it's just beautiful person after beautiful person. And then
Even
it's almost like the roles were made for these people.
oh
Based
yeah.
on how they auditioned it, because
It's like somebody made them in a character creator selection
Yes.
screen. Like
like Damon, everyone loves to joke about Damon, and he gives this one look, and I'm like, his blue steel look, okay, it
yeah, it's
It worked
super
for
hot.
it works for Damon, okay, like it is what it is. But no, like we're all so good, and there's not well. The one person's acting that I can maybe say was like meh, but when you look at the character they played, it makes sense. Is like Jeremy, I'm like, all right, you were kind of like watching paint dry or whatever, but then you throw Klaus on my screen, and I'm like,
oh my God,
I
Klaus
can
was so
forever.
good. Yeah. So that's something I've always wondered about, is because I can't really tell from a guy's perspective. Obviously, I look at someone like Damon and I'm like, that is a hot man.
Yes.
But someone like Klaus, is he hot?
I am not usually into blonde men. I have just always kind of ended up preferring brunette men. It's just the way I am. Klaus, I would leave my husband for Klaus. Even knowing how much of a psychopath he is, I'd be like, yeah, let me burn it all down. Like, let's go. Totally. And then Elijah, I mean,
oh, what a good looking man. Holy shit.
And then even the brother, Cole is fine. He's not like, he's fine. He's like, he's not ugly. He's just, he's fine. What's his name? Finn? Oh my God. The most tortured but beautiful man I have ever seen in my life. I believed that man was from a millennia ago and is just trying to set things right for his mom. Like, I believe that. Like, you can't tell me that he's a real man in my day and age who is not an original vampire. Finn's the brother who was going to help the mom, like, kill all of them, essentially. He only shows up, like, once or twice. Oh, look at him. Look at him.
Okay, see, I do not remember this guy. I didn't make it this far in my rewatch.
He's the brother. He's one of the brothers who was going to help their mom, the original witch, kill all of them. He was going to sacrifice himself while they're all linked. But man, for the little amount of screen time this man has had, he is one of the first things I think about when I think about the Vampire Diaries.
Really? Interesting. Okay.
The magnetism of just the tortured soul that he portrays. But any of the Michelsons can get it. Any of them. Any of them. Even the father, even the
really?
mother, all of that.
Okay.
Oh, I think with Michael, though, the father.
Yeah, look at Klaus. He is a good looking dude.
Oh, I mean, all of them. And I'll never forget turning my mother onto the show because her and I love to giggle about shows with attractive people in it. And she loves Bridgerton, especially. It's one of her favorites. But I remember she came over one day and I was watching this and she happened to like get pulled into it because she was like, Sam, who are all these beautiful people? And I was like, Mom,
Yeah.
I go, every scene,
Let me tell you.
scene. I go, you have no idea. I mean, I think with the dad, it has to do with his power.
Yeah.
And just like stalwart. I am here to right this wrong. Oh, Mikhail, man, all of them. I said, all of them.
Elijah, I have it in my notes somewhere. Elijah is one of my favorite vampires of all time. And I think it's also because I've seen most of the originals show. I didn't see the ending, but I saw most of it. And he is just he's very handsome, but also he's just the coolest fucking character.
Do you not just believe that he is someone from 1,000 years ago?
Right? Yeah.
Noble man who has come to save me and right the wrongs. And, I mean, and one of my favorite things to joke about is when they go Elijah.
But
no, he is probably, if I had to pick just one, and I could only like mate up with one of these people.
Mate up.
Elijah is endgame. I mean, he's just so beautiful, and he wants everyone to be happy and everything to be right, and
he would be
beautiful there.
Would he not be a fantastic James Bond? Like such a good James Bond.
Yes. Wow. I remember when I first looked up when I was watching it, like I always like to know if these men are like married to other like actresses and whatnot.
Sure.
He was married to and only recently just divorced Rachel Lee Cook from like Can't Hardly Wait. All those like young like 90s. Look up Rachel Lee Cook.
Oh, okay.
He was married to her until recently, and I was like, damn, girl, you knew early on, like, this man, you know?
Yeah, she's gorgeous.
Yeah,
look at there.
All my favorite movies from when I was younger, and they only recently got divorced, and it was one of the harder celebrity divorces to hear about. But also, like, okay, so maybe if I'm single again one day, which I really hope I'm not, I can go after him.
Yeah, she's super cute.
Yes. Oh, I love her. I love both of them, but he is just beautiful. But then again, like I said, they're all beautiful in this show.
They really are. I have a note here somewhere. I was taking notes as I was watching the first episode, and one of my notes was like, dear God, I forgot how hot Nina Dobrev is as Elena. And then my very next note is, dear God, Aunt Jenna is so hot.
Seriously, though, all of them. And how about the fact that the actress who plays Aunt Jenna is 2 years older in real life than Nina Dobrev?
Oh, I believe it. Yeah, for sure. There's no way. That's the other thing about this show is like none of these people were believed to be in high school. Like there's no way.
The actor
he was so old by the end of the show.
40 by the end, like a year away from 40. And I put in my notes where I go, oh man, season 5, you really start to see how old.
Yeah, you really start to see
in
it.
real life.
Yeah, I'm sure they had to do like a lot of makeup and a lot of but even that interview that I saw from just a couple of years ago where he was talking about, we were talking about it backstage, where he like wasn't super happy with Damon's character arc for a while. He still looks like amazing. Like he's like a vamp. Like he still looks the same as he did at the end of the series.
He's like ageless. He really is. He's just
who's the actor that plays Stefan?
Oh, what is it? Paul Paul, what's his name? Hold on. I've been on my IMDb all day. It's on my locked screen on my home because that's how many times a day I use it. Paul Wesley.
Paul Wesley.
Yeah. And listen, on paper, if you describe Damon and you
Whoa, this is
describe
crazy.
Paul, I would probably pick Paul. But what's his name? Ian Somerhalder plays Damon so fucking well that
Yes.
in real life, I would go with Damon. Like I would just he
Really?
exudes. Oh,
Okay, so we have to talk. First of all, this is what he looks like now, and I think
I love a beard. I love a beard. My husband didn't have a beard when we were first together, and now he's had a beard for 13 years now. We've been together 15. I got him to grow the beard around 2 years into our relationship, and he's had it ever since. I love a beard. I love
I think that every guy should grow a beard, but I think he looks better without one.
He might be one of the few cases where I
Yeah.
could agree with you and say
Because
does, but I love a beard.
Because he's just got like the chiseled jawline that you don't want to hide with a beard. Yeah.
And it almost makes him look a little like bloated, like a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
I love a beard. I just personally love a beard. Oh,
Whoa, look at him when he was super young. That's crazy. He looks so different.
yeah. He looks so much like what's his name? He's in like The Boys now. He plays the fish guy.
You think he looks like him?
They look alike. They do. They have very similar facial features.
Maybe. I don't know if I totally agree, but I can see kind of what you're getting at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so while we're talking about Damon and Stefan, Ian Somerhalder. It's the first thing that pops up. Look at him.
Oh, what happened? Is that a new photo? The first one?
That might be.
You know, he had like a very uplifting story that I read a couple years ago where so you know how Nina leaves the show at some point, right? And she claims it's not because her and Ian were dating and they broke up, which is okay,
Bullshit.
Sure. And he had just gotten married, you know, to the other girl who was on One Tree Hill and whatnot.
And she was the sister in Twilight too.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes. And wait, was she the no, that wasn't her. They just look alike. Yeah, she was Rosalie, right? In Twilight.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the thing that I found so interesting was that he was in so much debt when they got married because he had made a really bad investment that lost him like $1 million, something
Whoa.
insane. And she came into his life and like didn't hold it against him and said, I'm going to help you get out of this. And now they have like this really successful, I don't know, like tequila farm, something along those lines.
Whoa.
I just thought that was interesting that he came out and was like, I was drowning in debt from a bad investment when we met. She did not marry me because I was the Vampire Diaries star. And I like that story.
Wow, that's super cool. I didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
I wish some hot lady would come through and clear all my debt. That'd be sick.
Same. I need a Christian Grey, right? He's just got a ones.
Yeah, just a Christian Grey. Oh my god. So I think watching the show the past couple weeks, I guess we should talk about that real quick. Is we decided a couple weeks ago to do a Vampire Diaries episode because what we're doing with the Fantasy Files now is every other week is going to be a book discussion, and the weeks in between are going to be a topic, or maybe we do like a ranking or something like that. And so you came up with this idea for the first one. You're like, let's talk about Vampire Diaries.
Because you said you'd watched it, and I was like, wait, I need to talk about this.
Right. So ever since then, I have been watching the Vampire Diaries every single night, like literally getting in like 3 to 4 episodes per night. And I'm only at like the end of season 2. And this was a time in television history where we were getting like, I think season 1 is 22 episodes.
almost every season is 23 episodes, I believe.
Yeah.
Almost until it gets to the end, I think. But yeah, this was
that was a really
television.
Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. Nowadays we're getting like 8-episode seasons, and I'm just like I can't help but look at the Vampire Diaries and be like, dude, television has fallen so far. Like obviously production gets more and more expensive the more like special effects you add and everything. But it's like, dude, we used to get like 20 something episodes of a season. And as far as like Vampire Diaries go, there's really only like, I don't know, 3 or 4 episodes a season that are kind of fluff. Like a lot of it is like stuff is happening and you need every episode.
And no one episode is pure fluff either. You know, you're getting something, but
yeah,
it's
even
not,
the fluff episodes are like still, you know.
yeah, it's not like watching Lost where, you know, you've watched 8 episodes and you're like, nothing's happened on this show at all.
Did you see Ian Somerhalder in Lost too?
Yes, he lived out my worst nightmare of being, spoiler alert, buried alive. Okay, it's just that's why I said it. But we had talked about this earlier backstage where I said, there were points where, you know, I looked down and I was doing my little painting and then I looked up and I was like, oh shit, I need to go back because there's so much going on. And especially seasons 1 through 3, at least, like every episode is bam, 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 bam. Like it is. You not only can you not find that, but the TV execs don't seem to be giving shows enough time these days. They're like, oh, season 1 wasn't a hit. All right, cancel the show. And it's like, no, you need to give people a time to find out about it and then want to become obsessed with it. Or you can stream it one day and people are going to love a show with 1 million episodes backlogged because we don't get it anymore.
Right. Yeah. No, totally. I think this was like a really special time in like television history where things were just different. Like things were just different all around. We had more episodes per season. There was also stuff in this show where like it could not be made today. Like this show could not be made today. And you and I were talking a little backstage about some like political things. I'm not going to bring any of it up, but like, you know, we try not to talk about politics too much on the podcast, but there is definitely, when you look at today's television, it really seems like everything is written with HR kind of like, you know, craning their neck looking at the script, and like they don't have the freedom to kind of write really risky dialogue and risky like jokes and storylines and stuff. And so if you look at some of the stuff that was going on in the show, like it just could not be made today with the restrictions that are on television. And, you know, I think you could argue either way, like some things like maybe we don't need to like put on television or whatever. But I think on the whole, I think television was better when writers were able to take risks with their storylines and dialogues and stuff. And so anyways, that's what I really appreciated about the Vampire Diaries. Watching it the past couple weeks, I'm like, man, this was when television was like good and they weren't afraid to take chances and piss people off and offend people. Like, I miss this so much.
Me and my husband talk about that a lot when we're rewatching like The Office or 30 Rock is one of our favorite rewatches, and especially
it's so good.
30 Rock. We're like, oh man, like this would not get made today. This would absolutely not be made today. And it's sad because I feel like if we're living through the end times, like let me joke about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for real.
Bad joke. Okay? Like, because humor is my go-to for any uncomfortable situation. I'm going to absolutely make a joke out of it because I'd rather laugh than cry. Or if I'm not laughing, then I will be crying. So I'm going to laugh about this, okay?
Right.
So I
for
agree.
Sure.
I agree where unfortunately we're just like in this era where, you know, it's all about the bottom line and it's not about immediate numbers and seeing immediate return on investment. And it's unfortunate. And we've definitely lost a lot of what could have been really good television because of it.
Yeah, they're playing it really safe. And if have you ever seen the show Scrubs?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, Scrubs is my number one favorite show of all time. I've seen every single episode at least 10 times. I literally have like all the DVDs like right here. But I love Scrubs, and the reason I got them all on DVD is because they've taken episodes off of streaming services because they were like too offensive.
They do
And
that with It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
yeah, and it sucks, dude. It's like, yeah, that episode might be offensive, but it's part of like television history. Like, why would you want to like try to rewrite that? And so, anyways, that's a whole nother tangent. But what I liked about the Vampire Diaries, going back to it this time, I was like, man, this was when television was like really, really good, and they did not give a fuck. They did not give a fuck, dude.
It reminded me of also like Pretty Little Liars, which unfortunately I've gotten to an age where every time I go back for a rewatch, I want to bash my head against a wall because I'm like, I am too old for this now. Like I can't romanticize the like student teacher relationship that's like a really big part of like the plot line from the beginning.
Okay.
I'm like, no, I'm too old for this now. This is gross. Like, this is wrong. But thankfully, with the Vampire Diaries, they have at least not pushed me in that direction.
Yeah.
You know? I'm like,
I was kind of like when in the first season when Damon was like messing around with Caroline, I was like, ooh, I'm like, that's
early
like
seasons are not great for Damon. They're not.
yeah,
they're not great.
yeah, for sure, for sure. But one thing I like about this, and I think this is also a product of its time in a good way, I think, is, you know, if this show were to be made today, the brothers would not be like manly men, like they wouldn't be like men's men, because you look at you have Damon, who's like the badass one, and he's not afraid to like offend people or piss anybody off. He's kind of doing his own thing, and he's like evil to a certain extent. And then you have Stefan, who's like the complete opposite. Like he very much like cares about people, and he wants to do good, and he doesn't want to drink human blood and all of this other stuff. And I'm just so glad that they did not make Stefan like this wimpy kind of like, you know, just kind of like wimpy guy that's just like, I feel like if it were made today, he would have been that. And I like that even Stefan, who's like the good character, and he's not like the leather jacket wearing badass brother, like he's still like a man's man. Like he's still like a dude. And I really appreciated that about both of them. Like they both bring masculinity to the forefront in these characters that, you know, in other media, I've seen it where it's like they're not bringing masculinity in with their role. They're like these very like almost like borderline anti-masculine romance characters. And that always kind of irritates me, because we need both. We need both.
Yeah,
you know?
well, I think like in today's day and age, they would have made it so, you know, Stefan doesn't want to drink blood for moral reasons, you know, not because of the fact that he's essentially a blood addict. And if he acts a little bit, he goes absolutely insane, which is what I liked about the Vampire Diaries. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't, oh no, I'm morally against this, so I'm the good guy, and that's why, you know,
Yeah.
like it was because of his situation that he was the way that he was, and he in turn changed a lot of his habits. But at the end of the day, it wasn't just like a moral thing for the reason that he wasn't drinking blood.
Right. Yeah, it was more like, you know, he's like, if I indulge this even a little bit, I become a completely different person. And that was such an interesting part of Stefan's character in later seasons, when we see him turn into the Ripper, and we see him like, because early on in the show, I think it's Damon or somebody that says, yeah, Stefan was way worse than I ever was. And you start seeing flashbacks in like season 3 or 4 or something. And we see Stefan, he's like hanging out with Klaus back in like the 20s. They were like
Mhm.
actually friends. And then Klaus like compels him to forget all of it. But we see in these flashbacks that like Stefan was like diabolical. Like he was really, really sadistic. Um, and so it's cool. It's cool having that element to like this otherwise good character. And it also comes back to, the thing I was talking about at the beginning of the show, like the whole addiction thing. It's
Mhm.
like, you look at somebody who's like an addict who's in like the worst part of their life, like the very, very worst, and you think like that person can never change. Like that
Mhm.
person can like never become anything other than this like maniacal person. Um, and so that's also something I kind of related to with Stefan because like night and day, I am a completely different person
Mhm.
from the years that I was using.
Mhm.
And so I really, really appreciated that about Stefan's character.
Yeah, it made it
Um,
not like a black or white thing. It's like, listen, there's going to be gray. I'm not always going to be perfect, and nobody is, but know
right.
that like I realize I have this problem. I'm doing what I can to mitigate it in the ways that I can, but it's not going to be just, a magic wand that makes everything better. It's a day-to-day thing that I have to deal with. So I
Right.
that's interesting to look at it from that perspective. It
Yeah.
makes it make even more sense when you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, I've always just been like fascinated with vampires just because they're so like one to one. I would love to do more research into the beginning of like vampire fiction because I almost wonder if it would line up perfectly with the start of people like smoking opium and stuff. Like I really wonder if it was like a metaphor for the day when
Yeah,
people were starting to like do that kind of stuff.
interesting.
Because we see a lot of that fiction pop up in like Victorian times, like in the 1800s, and
Oh,
that's right around the time when people were finding like cocaine and
yeah. Mhm.
heroin and all these other things. So I kind of wonder if it was kind of a metaphor or an analogy. I don't know, one of the two.
Both. I mean, now it's probably more. Yeah, I mean, both. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I was like going
but
back to my, I'm like metaphor, analogy. I'm like, it works both ways. So,
sure. Um, so talking about the brothers both being masculine men, and really all the guys in the show are very like masculine men. Like you look at Jeremy, talk about another person that had a glow up even by season 2. Dear God, he's a good
well,
looking
once you
guy
wanted them
too.
to be like the vampire hunters when like the real bulking
Hmm.
up started, but
Yeah,
yeah,
he's walking around in like tank tops, all buffed
mhm,
out all the time.
yep, mhm, mhm. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with
Yeah, yeah.
it.
But yeah, so many good-looking people in this show, dear God.
Well,
But my
who would you pick as like your hottest character?
yes, that was one of my questions. My hottest character has got to be it's got to be Elena, but it's really close with Jenna. Because I love redheads, and Aunt Jenna is so like smoking hot. But also Damon. Like I just like as a straight dude, I look at Damon and I'm like that is like Henry Cavill. That is
Mhm.
like the bad boy Henry Cavill. You know? What about you?
It's just so much of a toss up for me. It really is because I struggle to choose between the other brother set of Niklaus and Elijah. The
Oh
two of them
yeah.
are very much at the top for me.
Yeah.
And it would be really, really hard to pick one. But if I also really think Alaric is very, very good looking.
Ooh.
Rick,
Alaric is such a
man,
good character.
he's if I had to pick my favorite character, it would be Alaric. Absolutely, hands down, no question, favorite character, Alaric. But if I
Yeah.
just say most good looking, I think at the end of the day, if I looked at every character and was like based off of the character they played and what they look like, I would pick Elijah. I think I would pick
Yeah, I think that's fair. He is just the most like classically
Elijah.
handsome person. Like, oh
Yeah.
my God.
Like, I believe you are from a millennia ago. I believe
Right.
and you
Yeah.
adapted through the centuries. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it would be Elijah. I think so.
Yeah. I don't think I noticed it when I was younger, but now that I'm like a little bit older, I look at Bonnie. I don't know, Kat Graham, is that her name in real life? And I'm like, dear God, she is like super, super hot too.
They all are, and that's why I feel so
There's
bad to say
it's
because I'm
just
like,
a
even though,
long
like,
list of hot people.
I just want you guys to know that I find every person on this show to be disgustingly good looking. Okay, like it's just we are, very much nitpicking at this point to make these
Sure.
selections.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody is absolutely gorgeous. Even someone like the girl that Jeremy kind of dates in the first season, Anna, she's like a
Yes.
vampire and then she
Mhm.
becomes a ghost. I'm like, man, she's like really cute too. Like
Yep.
it's just everybody on the show.
Everybody. It's crazy.
Mm.
They really
But
did such a good job in casting the show.
yeah, they knew what they were doing. This is back when they knew how to make good television. They're like, let's take a bunch of hot people, throw them in a room, make sure they're all good at acting, and write like a halfway decent script and see what they do, and sell millions and millions and millions of
Yeah.
like,
Which I didn't know until I watched that YouTube video that the Vampire Diaries books were only written because like the company was like, we want to sell vampire books. Let's get a ghostwriter essentially to write these vampire books. And so she did, and then it turned into the Vampire Diaries TV show. But then the studio wanted it to be Elena and Stefan in the end, which to
Yeah.
me is fucking insane. Like, how you want anything other than Elena and Damon to me is
Oh, what? Oh, we're gonna fight about
let's
this.
fight about this. Elena, if I had to choose between Damon and Stefan, Damon.
Oh no, dude. I think like okay, you're saying if you were the person
That was
if you were
Elena.
okay. See, I'm thinking more along the lines of like the story in the show, and it's just like I felt like awful like rewatching this and like seeing the early episodes with Stefan because they're like making all these promises to each other. She's like, it'll always be you for all of like eternity. And
At
I'm just like,
17, you're making these statements.
sure, but the show is like it's upping the ante, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like I look at that and I'm like, dude, you promised that you would be by Stefan's side like throughout everything, and then she like abandons him. What I think it's once he becomes the Ripper, right? She abandons him and hooks up with Damon.
Not at first. She doesn't like immediately abandon him. She tries to help him, and then he says some really nasty shit repeatedly. And that's when Rebecca is first around with Klaus.
Right.
And I look at it as like she was kind of pushed into Damon's arms. And she realized, like, this was my main thing between Stefan and Damon, okay? Is that Stefan has this very narrow view and he wants you to be good and he wants you to be this way and like this is what you should be doing. But with Damon, he's like, oh, you're feeling this way? Okay, I understand. I will help you through the feelings that you're feeling. Where Stefan was constantly like, I want you to be this person.
No, I don't think that's true. I think that Damon is more like, let's cover it up with like fun and partying and blood and all this stuff. And Stefan's like, let's find a way to like work through this in like a healthy way. And Damon's just like, let's just fuck and drink blood and like all this stuff. And I think the show didn't completely fall apart when Elena became a vampire, but it started to. And I think that like I just didn't like that Elena was like she becomes a vampire and throughout the past 4 seasons she's been like upset with Stefan when he drinks human blood or like Caroline like she's like no you have to do the Stefan diet that's the way to do it that's the right way to do it and then she becomes a vampire and suddenly because she's a vampire she's like oh no that's not the way to do it you got to drink human blood it's like yeah but you've been preaching for the past 4 seasons that Stefan's way is the right moral way to do it, and you're like, well, now that I'm a vampire, fuck it. And
I
it's
think that's why
like,
I find them both
oh, it makes me so
sanctimonious.
mad, Sam.
I find them both to be very sanctimonious and like, no, I want to be with someone that I'm gonna have fun with. I don't want to be with someone who's like constantly gonna be like, this is what we should be doing. This is the moral right thing. I think overall,
But you know from the earlier seasons that Stefan isn't that boring. Like he's not like yes, he has a certain diet, but he's not like a boring person.
he's just too moody for me. Like moody in the not fun way. Like moody in a very unfun manner.
I so disagree. Oh my
That's
gosh.
that's what makes these videos great is we can disagree and we can state our explanations. And no, like Damon, you're gonna have fun with. Like, look at all the crap going on in their life. Give me someone who's gonna give me those few moments of amazing fun instead of the person who are we could be having that moment of fun, and you're just gonna make me feel worse about myself.
Yeah, but I feel like Stefan is more like reliable. Like Damon is like a fun fling, but
No,
Stefan is like long-term sustainability, like
I
solid.
understand why you would think that way, but with Damon, he never picks anyone. So if he's picking you, you never have to worry about anything for the rest of your life.
Mm,
Damon is
Yeah.
singular minded. Elena was his only, like, Elena's happiness was the only thing he cared about.
yeah. So here's the thing. After we do this live stream, I'm literally going to keep watching Vampire Diaries for
That's
the
what I'm
rest
going
of
to
the
go
day.
do when we're done. Is
Yeah.
really on season 5. I've seen all this before, but I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, because I remember watching the show through for, when I was watching it the first time and being sold on Damon. Like when she was with Damon, I was like, I'm enjoying this. Like I can see there's definitely like a gradual shift. It's not like a quick thing that happens.
No.
It's like a very gradual shift. And I remember really enjoying that gradual shift. But doing this rewatch, if I haven't said it so far in the podcast, I'm about at the end of season 2 where Tyler is just starting to turn into a werewolf. And at this point, Elena and Stefan are together and I think they'll be together for at least another season. And as of right now, I'm just like, I cannot see how she would possibly choose Damon. Like,
I would have picked Damon. Absolutely.
with all of the promises to Stefan and all of the like things between them, and then even when you get into the further seasons and you see the doppelganger effect, like Silas and whatever Amara or whatever, it's like the Stefan archetype and the Elena archetype are meant to be soulmates throughout all of eternity, and it's meant to be this ongoing thing that replicates every like 500 years or so. And so for her to be with Damon, I was like, okay, but like the whole part of the mythology is that her and Stefan are always together. They're always endgame.
But I felt like they were breaking the cycle by not continuing this like doppelganger thing. But also, if there was like a weird doppelganger thing through all the centuries, wouldn't they be like related to each other?
Like, I was thinking that too this morning. I was thinking about that. I was thinking that too.
I don't think I thought about that before. Yeah.
I think the generations would be enough removed to where it would be like very, very thin.
Yeah.
But then honestly, that got me thinking about just like humanity in general. I was like, even if even if you don't believe the and I don't know anybody who really does, the whole Genesis thing of like the Earth started with 2 people. Even if you believe that it was like multiple tribes, there had to be like a ton of like in marrying and like we're all, I mean, that's a completely different topic,
Yeah.
but
No, I
it got
get
me spiraling into this whole
Mhm.
thing.
I would say the relationship that I wanted the most, that angered me the most, that it never actually happened, would be Caroline and Klaus. I wanted that so badly, which honestly might just be me being like, dude, Klaus wanted you and you don't want Klaus. Like, what's wrong with you? I don't get this. But that one was more frustrating to me than any of them.
Yeah, I think that was really good. I was never like, oh, Klaus and Caroline like need to be together. I always thought I thought it was fine, but I was like, this guy after like thousands and thousands and thousands of years of being selfish suddenly finds Caroline is infatuated with
Yes,
her. Like,
yes.
why?
But that's what made it like so much more special in a way where it was like, look at this dude who's been like a daemon through millennia, you know?
Yeah.
And here he has found this woman that he allows Tyler to come back eventually. She should have died 2 times and he saved her when he reminds me of my 7-year-old where we have been dealing with this problem where even if it's in his own best interest, my son will say, nope, not doing it because I know you want me to do it, you know? And
Yeah.
that's Klaus. Like, oh, you want me to do this? I am not going to do it. Nope, not happening. But Caroline is like his Achilles heel and he always folds and gives
Mm,
in and whatnot. And so, like, I felt like it was
I
another
do like that, yeah.
dating relationship, you know, where it was like,
Yeah.
oh, this guy who you just assume is like a terrible person, but I think it's in my notes somewhere where it's like, I love how in this show, you're a bad guy until you find a woman you love. And then it's like, okay, that you've done all these bad things because like you now love a woman and you're now willing to try to be different.
Right. Yeah, it is a little that is kind of where the eye rolly parts of it
Yes.
come in.
Yes.
Um but yeah, I don't know. I don't have too many thoughts about the Klaus Caroline thing, but does it not, isn't it alluded to in the originals that they are still together?
So, well, it gets crazy later on because like Rick comes back to life and then he
Oh my
gets this
god.
woman pregnant, but then she dies and the babies are transferred to Caroline's stomach.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that.
And Caroline and Rick like do get together for a while. But in the
Caroline and Rick are together?
I believe they like raised those girls together from the show Legacy, whatnot.
But is like Rick and Caroline
I
like,
think
are they
so.
fucking? Really?
I think they marry.
What? Holy shit. That
Rick,
is not.
Caroline and Alark were engaged but broke it off. But then they still raised the children together.
Okay, weird.
There was a part where they are like kind of somewhat together.
What? That is crazy. Is
Yeah,
that in the
that's like
originals?
no, I think it's in like the final season of the Vampire Diaries when she's carrying his
Maybe
babies.
No, because Caroline and Stefan are together.
Yeah, but I think Caroline and Rick like are maybe they're not like together, but like they are together.
Weird. I do not remember that. That's interesting. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
but no, because then it's sort of no, she does marry Stefan. Caroline and Lark were engaged, but their relationship ended and then they raised the daughters together. Yeah. See, I've watched all
Wow.
of them. I've watched the originals, I've watched Legacies, I've watched all of them.
Is
So-
Legacies good?
Okay, so here's what I really, really love about Legacies. It brings back that Vampire Diaries era where in that show, every episode is like a different mythological creature or
Yeah.
supernatural creature coming and they have to figure out how to defeat it. And I
Yeah.
really miss shows like that where each
Yeah.
episode is kind of like bottleneck, like on its own.
Yeah.
If you're like at a boarding school and whatnot, and Rick runs it, and his 2 twin daughters are there, and then Klaus's daughter with Haley is the main character in the show, and she's the one who's really misunderstood and nobody gets her because, she's a tribrid and whatnot,
Right.
witch, vampire, and werewolf.
Yeah.
I forget where I was going with
And
all of
witch,
this.
right? Is like
Oh,
witch,
yeah,
vampire, and werewolf.
hybrid. She's all three.
Yeah.
But yeah, Caroline and Rick have like a little thing towards the end, and they like almost end up together.
Weird.
Yeah.
This will be an interesting rewatch because I forgot about that. But Alaric and Jenna were the best couple.
They were so
I
sweet.
think.
And it made me so upset that they didn't that Jenna got killed off so
I
freaking
know.
early.
I
Oh,
know. That's so annoying. Okay, so one thing I want to talk about, we've kind of gone a ways away from it, which is totally fine. I love tangents. But we were talking about the brothers being portrayed as like men's men, right? And another thing I really like about this show is that the girls are also portrayed really well. Like I
mhm.
think if this show was made today, all of the female characters would need to be like the strong warrior type, like or like one of the boys. And I really like that the female characters in this show are like feminine. I know that sounds crazy to like have to ask for, but like the female characters are incredibly strong. There's a number of characters, Catherine being the obvious like one of them, where they could kill anybody, but they're also like feminine women. Like I feel like that's crazy to even have to like ask for in a TV show, but I really liked that the way that the women were portrayed in this show as well. Do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
I mean, Caroline was probably one of my favorite character arcs overall. I really loved hers, where she was kind of this jealous, stereotypical,
Yeah.
waspy blonde woman, white blonde woman in the beginning. And then she really just got so much more depth as it went along. And I actually had in my notes somewhere how with Caroline, she was like the one person when you compare her to Elena, where she was really there for everyone day to day. It didn't matter if it was your big problem, it didn't matter if it was your little problem. Caroline was there. But Elena, either everything revolved around her or she seemed to forget about all of her friends in her life if it wasn't, her big problem. And
Right.
I really loved that storyline, which having watched, if you just watch like the first season, you'd be like, ugh, Caroline. Like, how could you root for Caroline? But
Yeah.
by the end, she's one of the ones I'm rooting for the most. And Bonnie, I also loved, and it really pissed me off that she did so much for all of her friends, but the second she wasn't needed to help them out of a problem, they essentially
Yeah.
forgot she existed. And that
Yeah.
really pissed me off.
Yeah, Bonnie is such a good character like throughout the entirety of the show. Like
Yeah.
I think Bonnie is so good. She's so complex. Like in the earlier seasons where I'm at, she's like really conflicted on the whole vampire thing.
Mhm.
Like she really doesn't know how she feels about it. And I'm like, I think the show needed a character that knew about the supernatural. She knew who were vampires and who wasn't. But she was like, I strongly disagree with all of this, but I'm also not going to sell all you guys out. And she just had like a really complex role in a lot of the stuff in the earlier seasons where like they would talk her into things and she'd be like, I'm not comfortable with this, but I see why we need to do it. And yeah, I liked her throughout all the seasons. And then
Yeah.
the season that was essentially just her and Damon
Mhm.
was so good, like so much character growth for both of those characters.
It was
I
such
know a
like a
lot of people like don't like that season,
Oh, I
but
love their little like buddy thing they have going on that whole season.
yeah,
I love it, especially because they were at odds so much in every other season.
right. Yeah. Yeah, I really really liked that. Um but yeah, anything else about like the ladies, the lady characters? Any thoughts on that?
I feel like I'm missing something because like I really love Rebecca. I love what she brings to the table is like this original biatch who's not going to take
Yeah.
shit from anyone, and her
Rebecca's
brother
great.
fucked her over so many times. I really enjoyed her in the originals. The only thing that upsets me is in the originals they have her in like a different body all the time, and so you never actually get you rarely ever get the character, the actress who played Rebecca in
Yeah.
the Vampire Diaries, but her plot line is super interesting in the original.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. But
Honestly, once all the body swapping starts to happen in this franchise, it kind of goes off the rails a little bit, and you can tell that it was because they couldn't get the actor or whatever because they were doing like another show or another movie, and so they had to find a way.
it's a season to film, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Like who possesses Tyler Lockwood? Is it Mikhail or Klaus or one of those?
Klaus does.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he does
Yeah.
it to Alaric.
Yeah, that was so like okay, like I just once the body swapping got introduced, that was the one part that like
And that was very
not
early.
not the one
that was
part,
like
but
season 2, maybe 3 at the latest.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
when it
where
gets a little too much where you're like, I can't keep up right now with who's who.
yeah, and I think even the idea of it is just like so cheap. I feel like up to that point, like all of the magic and stuff had been like really it was like a system. Like it was like this means that which equals this, which like it had like it's ways that you could look at it and figure it out. But then once the body swapping happened, it kind of all goes out the window. And then they start doing the thing where like a character that dies isn't always dead.
It's when they did the whole like veil thing and
Yeah.
whatnot. That's when for me it gets a little too convoluted, and I'm just like, all right, you guys kind of lost me here. Like I'm gonna keep watching, but I'm a little lost.
Yeah, it's just like, all right, okay.
Yeah.
What were what so we've praised the show a lot for the past hour. What were some of the cringier parts of the show? Is there anything that you like watch as it goes on and you're like, okay, let's move on from this?
Anytime anyone was going through like a rebellious phase and they wanted to like
Yes.
dance on a table in front of everyone, that was definitely super, super cringy. And the other thing would be anytime Nina Dobrev had to do an emotional scene of, oh my God. I was just like,
Oh yeah, that's fair.
I didn't think she was the greatest when it came to her acting abilities for that type of
Okay.
scene.
Yeah.
And Elena in general, by season 3, I'm like, you are such a whiny bitch. I do not want to listen to you complain anymore because
Yeah.
everything's about you while all of your friends are going through equally as much shit as you, but it seems to always be about you.
You. Yeah. Yeah, the whole show like really focuses on her, and it kind of gets to be a bit grating.
How much can I go back and forth between do I pick Damon or Stefan? Do I just make up your fucking mind and stick with it? Like, stand by.
Yeah. And also like I hate the scenes that are like I love Stefan, but he's bad for me, so I'm going to take a break from him, and like just like that whole back and forth. It's like, okay, I think the things that like really annoy me about the show are like honestly like some of the most like romantic dramatic moments. I feel like there's a lot of a lot of scenes in the series where there's like highly dramatic moments that are really good, but whenever it's like one of the really dramatic like romantic moments, it's kind of like, okay, it's always one of the characters, and it's like one of you is taking like an extreme side of this. Like it's like you can be balanced and make it interesting, but there's always one character that is taking like the extreme end of the spectrum. Sometimes it's Damon, sometimes it's Stefan, sometimes it's Elena.
I was going to
And
say Caroline, like when she first thinks Elena wants to be with Damon, she freaking loses her mind and is always talking shit about Damon. And I'm like, okay, just like stop. Just stop. She's made her choice. Like, let her fucking have it. Stop trying to get her back with Stefan. Or when Elena breaks up with Stefan, but then she still wants him to act like he's her boyfriend in the way that he responds to things. Like, no, sweetie, you made your
no,
choice.
bitch.
Live with it.
Yeah.
You can't eat your cake and have it too, okay? You gotta pick one way.
Yep. For sure. I think the other cringy moments for me are when they are when it's like I call them like set piece episodes, like, oh, it's the Founders Ball, or it's like the Founders Ball, or like whatever the like
Founders
the big
Ball
like
in general, terrible.
It's so like, oh, we're gonna have a beauty pageant, or like it's the Christmas Wonderland Ball. There's always some like, it's like, I do not believe for a second in this tiny bumfuck nowhere town that they have these extravagant balls and like events. Like, it's just like, okay. And then my frustration comes where it's like most of the episode is centered around like, we got to get ready for this thing.
I don't stop. You're gonna make me. I'm already tired, Spence.
I know. I don't know why. I think it's because I hit my vape so many times in a row. It's like making me yawn. But yeah, it's just like it's just like, oh yeah, we got to get prepared for the thing. Like, let's have several scenes of us like, you know, making like sending cards out to people and like making the decorations and all this stuff. And it's like, that's just not what I'm here for. I understand why they have it. I understand the demographic they're going for in those episodes, but that's just not why I'm here. And so
it's like, I think it's a high school setting. Like, I get it, which is honestly a main reason I think I like the originals so much more than the Vampire Diaries is because they are adults. They are not playing at being teenagers. It is not about like stupid, I want to win prom queen. And off her humanity. So she wants fucking Rebecca to win and whatnot. But that's why I really love the originals, because they're not playing at being children. It is straight up adult vampires, whatever, dealing with the shit they're dealing with. And I think as an adult, that's why I've shifted more towards.
I would totally agree. Like, I'm excited to. I think I'm gonna rewatch the originals too, because I remember liking that show like a lot. Like I really enjoyed the originals. And so yeah, I think I'll rewatch that as well. And I do remember having the same feeling where it's like, okay, we're out of high school, we're in New Orleans, and we're like, you know, there's still like the romance and those kind of plot lines, but more than anything, it's about like the magic system and how all of these things are like working together and
like a territory war.
Yeah,
between,
that
like,
was really
magical beings.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And let me just say, the cast of the originals is equally as beautiful as the Vampire Diaries. It's insane. Like, where did they find all of these people, and why are you not casting all of your shows this way?
Right. Yeah.
Like, are portraying the characters in a way that it's believable to me.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, you should watch it. We should do another episode. And
yes, let's do an originals thing. That'd be great. Do you want to take a quick bathroom break and we'll come back in a couple minutes? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. And we are back. Okay. So I just want to say, we've talked about Damon a lot, but I have it in my notes here. Damon is one of my favorite characters, like of all time, full stop.
Oh,
Like,
I love that.
Damon is just like one of my favorite like fantasy characters ever, and I think Ian Somerhalder does such a good job with him. There's so many like you can really see the point in the show. It's like maybe halfway through season 1 where he like really figures out the character and he just like is having so much fun with it.
Mhm.
Like, oh my God, some of his lines, I cannot wait to get to like later seasons where some of his lines are like just so quote worthy. Like
I
they're
feel like
amazing.
he says what like our inner voices are saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
what you would say if you just did not fucking care at all about what
Right.
anybody thought. I am gonna tell you in exact plain words what is going on right now, whether you like it
Right.
or not.
And his line delivery, like there's just
Oh,
something about like his line delivery that is just like, yes, that is exactly how you should say that thing.
yes, he is
It's
Damon.
so good. It's so good. Um, have you read any of the books?
So somebody loaned me the first one a while ago, and unfortunately I have this problem. If I watch the show first of something and I really like it, I have trouble going to the books. Just like I love the Magicians TV show, and everyone has said the books are so different that like I can't read the books because I love the show so much that I don't want to
Yeah.
see the difference, you know? So I have not read the books.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you could read them out of curiosity, but they are like way, way, way different than the show. Like they're not even close to
Yeah.
being the same thing. Um, like Elena becomes like an angel. She doesn't become a vampire. She's like this angelic thing. And
Oh,
like Damon and Stefan are kind of the same, but like yeah, there's like these like Japanese folklore things that show up that they have to fight, and like I don't know, it's really odd. But I remember I watched the show and then I started reading the books, and I think I made it like 3 or 4 books in,
wow.
and then I was like, okay, this is getting like really absurd.
Yeah.
But they're definitely interesting. I don't know. They're not as cringy as like Twilight. Like it almost seemed like the books were less focused on the romance than the show is.
See, and here's the thing. What was I just gonna say? You know, when you have like something you really want to say and it just freaking brain farted. Oh,
No, I hate that feeling.
oh, all right. It'll come to
Yeah,
me at some point. It'll come to me.
that's okay. Yeah, the books are like they're way more focused on like there is the romance, and that's definitely like a big part of it, especially like the first
Mhm.
book. But I would say it's like significantly more focused on the supernatural threat and how are we going to
Mhm.
defeat this thing and that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Um,
Oh,
yeah, they're interesting to read. They're just
yeah.
weird.
I was gonna say. So I've said before, I got into fantasy much later in life. It really wasn't until I was a bartender in Philly, and this guy who used to come to the bar all the time, like consistently, I was a bartender. We started talking one day about books, and I was like, yeah, I like this and that, and like, you know, we just bonded over liking books in general. And he got me into, I want to say the first thing that really really captured me was King Killer Chronicles. That was
Yeah.
like the first thing that was like, all right, this is like a whole genre that I have not explored, and I can't believe it, and I need to get into it. But I distinctly remember being in high school, and book 4 of Twilight was about to come out, maybe. And up
Okay.
until that point, I had said, ew, like, who reads this? You know, like,
Right.
and I was a huge reader. I read so much. And a girlfriend was like, listen, just like borrow my first book. I have the first book.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember, and this is in high school, when like FOMO was such a big deal, like the fear of missing out on anything. And I
Yeah.
would not go out or go out and immediately leave because I needed to go home and find out what happened next in Twilight.
Ooh.
And it was a really big deal for me because not only was I not a big romance reader, I was not a fantasy reader. And
Right.
that was actually probably my first real like step into it, being like, oh, I really enjoy like this type of story.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, the impressions, those kind of books leave an impression on you for the rest of your life to some extent for what you enjoy
Mm,
in reading fantasy. And I think um I don't think Vampire or Twilight was like my first like fantasy experience as far as reading goes,
mhm,
but it definitely left an impression in me where I was like, okay, I like romance in my fantasy books. Like I like a good, like, obviously Twilight isn't like a super well written romance, but I it made me realize that I enjoyed having a good romance subplot in my fantasy reading for sure.
What would you say was your first fantasy novel that really hooked you? That said, "Oh, I wanna look up more." I know mine, I'll tell you after, but tell me yours first.
Mine was definitely the Dresden Files. I started reading
Really?
that when I was like 18. And I m- I mentioned I mentioned the drug addiction in the earlier part of my
Right.
life. And I was in jail, and I found the Dresden Files, and I read it the whole time I was in there. And then when I got out, I started looking into the other ones, and it started like cascading this whole thing where I had to read the entire series of
Mhm.
Dresden Files. And then from there, I went to the Night Angel books.
Okay.
That was the next one.
Mhm.
And then there was like a bunch of books that my uncle gave me because he found out that I had read these books. He's like, "Oh, I love those books. Here's a couple more." Um, so then there was like the Time Master trilogy by Louise Cooper, and then a few other books. I kind of bounced around a bit. The Fallen Blade series by Kelly McCullough. And then I kind of stuck to like a particular genre for a while. Like I liked fantasy books that were focused on like one protagonist and didn't have like a big cast of characters, just like one person that was like mostly on the
Mhm.
center stage. Um and it wasn't until we started the podcast where I really started like branching out and finding books that had like big casts of characters and just very very different. And nowadays I'm pretty much open to reading anything. Like,
That's, like, really interesting, though, that it took the podcast, like, I would have thought
mhm.
it's because you had, like, opened up what you were reading that you were like, "Oh my god, I wanna talk about, like, all of these things." So that's interesting that, like, the podcast itself.
Well, yeah, it kind of like, well, because before the podcast, I had read like King Killer and King's Dark Tidings and the Scythe series, so I had branched out a little bit, but I still very much had a type. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I had like a thing that I liked, and I didn't like to go too far away from that thing. Um, and so we started the podcast after I had been listening to a lot of other fantasy book podcasts. And I was like, man, I have all these recommendations. There's so many books that I need to read. And then it led to me and Gabe like reading, or Gabe and I reading some of those books, and then being like, yeah, we should talk about this on YouTube. And then from there, I mean, once we started the podcast, the recommendations are just like never ending. And
Never
so then
ending.
we had like a ton of things to read, and it made us branch out quite a bit. And there was like a weird growth period where we knew that we needed to branch out in our
Mhm.
fantasy interests, but we didn't know like how to do it. And so it kind of took a while to get us to the point where we're down to read like anything.
Well, and also like you want to enjoy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you don't want to be forcing yourself. You don't want it to feel like a job, you know?
Yeah.
So I get that. That makes sense. I would say for me, we ended up reading this book. I can't think of what the first one was. I want to say it was Tyrion and Teclis, and it's part of the Warhammer Time of Legends world.
Yeah.
And so it was the first time ever that I had read a book and you read it from one protagonist's point of view. And then a book that could be written even by a different author would give you the what I don't want to say villain, but do you know what I'm saying? The anti-hero, the whatever,
Antagonist.
the protagonist,
Antagonist.
You read it from their point of view, and you're like, oh, now I kind of understand how they got here. And it was the first time I'd ever read a series where it was a world, but it wasn't one author writing it, and every book wasn't following a specific character. It would be following a different character in the world. And it really just opened my mind to all of these like fantasy options and things that were possible. And it is something I have met very few people, like I counted on less than one hand's fingers, that have read these books. But if you read it now, you probably wouldn't love it, reading everything you've read, you know what I mean? But reading it at the time I read it, and it just opening this door to me to a whole new world. I will never forget the Warhammer Time of Legends series. It is just, it really opened up my eyes to such a huge world, and I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, for as cringy as things like Twilight are, I think it did the ultimate benefit of bringing so many people into the fantasy space, making like regular people realize, oh, I like learning about like vampires and werewolves and like how this magic is used, and they all have these different powers, and it kind of just like broke that barrier to the mainstream.
Yeah.
And you know, I've been working on this video for a long time now. I'm not sure when it'll ever be out, but I've been adding notes to like a Google Doc that I have, of like, is fantasy mainstream now? Like, is fantasy still nerdy? Is the title that I have for the thing. And so it's like, I think that things like Twilight and Vampire Diaries and Game of Thrones, I think all of these things broke fantasy into the mainstream, where you can tell people like, oh yeah, I like reading fantasy books, and it's not as cringy or weird as it used to be 20 years ago. I have this guy that I work with. He's a drywaller that helps me on a lot of my jobs whenever I need like a lot of drywall, like mudded and textured and everything. And he is like the most lumberjack looking motherfucker you've ever seen. Like, he is just like a man's man. He looks like he goes home and like splits logs in his free time. And he and I were working on a job. I was learning how to do some of his drywall tricks. And he was like, oh, I see you have your headphone in. What are you listening to? And I'm like, oh, it's a book. He's like, oh, you listen to books? He's like, what do you listen to? And I tell him, like, it's like this fantasy book. He's like, I love fantasy books. And we ended up becoming like really good friends, because he's also like, he's read like a lot of fantasy books. And even for him, it sounded like it had all stemmed from something like Game of Thrones, that like he hadn't been into it before, but because of, you know, this big TV show or whatever, it had kind of broken it into the mainstream.
Game of Thrones is a great, to me, like introductory book series. And you have not read the book series, if I remember correctly.
I've seen 3 seasons, I think, but I haven't read the books.
First of all, I could go on a Game of Thrones freaking tangent forever, because I know everyone hates the final season, but to me, like, it had to be the final season. I fucking loved it because of the way it was so sped up that there were no boring moments. It was like bam, 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 bam. But it was one of the first fantasy series I read as an adult, and it is very much like you could picture it being like this world in a way.
Yeah.
You know, like it wasn't gonna bash you over the head with the fantasy. So I think it's a
It was-
great beginner series for people who want to get into fantasy. It's only gonna give you little bits, you know?
It's the bridge from historical fiction to fantasy.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I used to say like, oh, like I'm not a historical fiction person, but Ken Follett absolutely just fucking made me say I was wrong. Like I was wrong. Historical fiction can be fucking amazing. The Fall of Giants series is to this day one of my favorite series ever. I highly suggest anyone read this series because there are 3 books. Each book goes through like a different like decade of like a different war, but you start out with like one set of characters and then it's their children that are in the next book and then it's their children that are in the final one. And it's based on so much of like it is our historical fiction, real history with fake characters. And man, I mean, I feel like that's what kind of got me into like politics in a way. Was like,
Right.
how can I complain about certain things when like I either voted against my own interest or didn't know enough to
Yeah.
make a logical vote for myself? So, dude, read Ken Follett if you have not. He is master freaking author.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't really read any historical fiction. It's never sounded particularly appealing to me, but maybe I'll check that out if
I
it's
always felt that way. And then again, the guy from the bar that I worked at was like, "Now you
Yeah.
gotta read Ken Follett's Fall of Giants." And dude, like mind blowing. Within like 3 chapters, you are so sucked in, and they are chonkers. They are big freaking books, but man, like I will never be embarrassed to recommend Ken Follett's books. Not only did he have Fall Giants, he also had the Pillars of the Earth, which was a TV show even at one point. But man,
Oh,
like,
really?
it is based off of the description. I can guarantee you, like me, would be like, no, I'm not reading this. This is not interesting. He is maybe my favorite author. Just the way that he writes is so masterful. He is the Patrick Rothfuss of historical fiction in the way that he writes.
Wow. Okay.
And from me saying that, like I would not lightly say that.
Yeah.
I don't like historical fiction, and I've tried a lot of it since his books because I was like, oh, is this what I've been missing out on? And then I was like, no, I haven't. Like I just happened to read the one series, his 2 series that are so phenomenal. He's masterful.
Awesome. Okay, I'll have to check that out. I'll give it a chance for sure. We've come a long way from the Vampire Diaries, which is fine, but
That's us.
that's how we are.
It's without Gabe, like to keep us on track.
Right, yeah, Gabe keeps us on track, right? He's our cornerstone. Let's talk about how nostalgic, doing the rewatch. How nostalgic for the early 2000s was this for you? Watching them use like an early version of Google and like the early smartphones.
No, they used
like
Bing. They
They used Bing, which is so funny. I don't know anybody besides maybe my mom who uses Bing. And I think it's so funny. Even when they do use Google, it's like this really archaic version of Google is not what it is today. It's just so funny. It's so funny to watch all of these like early 2000s things. And I'm like, God, I wish people still dress like this. I wish people still dressed like the early 2000s, like when skinny jeans were in style and like, I don't know.
It's sadly coming back, which I really wish it wouldn't, because I definitely do not want to wear low-rise jeans again. Like,
what?
absolutely not. Like, no.
I feel the exact opposite.
I lived through the 2000s as a woman, okay? Like, we had to wear much more inappropriate shit than men did.
It's great for me.
Well, of course it's great for you. And I respect that. I get it. As a woman who also will look at other women, I get it. Like, that's fine. Like, that's great to look at. But as a woman who has to wear it,
Yeah.
Spence, I do not want to fucking wear that shit. I do not want to wear any of that. And I think it's so funny. I've been on Reddit for at least like 15, probably closer to 20 years now because it's been so long and I'm coming up on 35. And it is so set to like the subreddits that I've wanted to see at this point. And one of my favorite things to laugh at is like find this fashion or find my fashion. And these girls are all uploading photos of 2000s era outfits. And they're all like, where do I find this? And I go, oh my God, it really is cyclical. It really all does come back. No, no, please stop. No, absolutely not. I don't want to wear 3 shirts. One's a tank top, one's like a half sleeve, and then another's
It's so good. I love the layering. Even besides like, even outside of like an attractive thing, like I think layering shirts is the best thing we've ever done as a species.
Says
I
man
loved
has
it.
never worn layered shirts. I mean,
Fuck off. Yes, I have. Are you kidding me? I grew up in the 2000s. Dude, I wore like a long sleeve with a t-shirt over it. And then in the summer, it was like a t-shirt with like a slightly longer t-shirt under it so that you get like that little bit of like overlap. I definitely wore layered shit.
I think it's because as an adult, like I fully dress for comfort at this point, and I do not give a fuck. I don't care what you think of my outfit, bitch. Like I do not care. I'm gonna go home to the house I pay for and sit on my couch and drink my wine and paint my little fucking paint by numbers. And I do not care what you think about what I'm wearing outside of my house for the very few hours outside of my house.
That's what happens when you get married, Sam.
Yeah.
Like I still dress for everybody else. I'm like, I want to impress you with what I'm wearing.
Oh, see, I always joke about me and my girlfriend were talking about recently that, you know, my husband was my first boyfriend. I have always been the crazy person who was like, I want to be single. I don't want to have to tell someone where I'm going. I don't want to have to explain the choices that I've made. I am who I am. And I am also so self-sufficient. Like I love being alone. I have a million fucking things to keep me occupied. It's actually the relationship that is harder because now I have to like share my alone time. So for me, I don't give a fuck. I do not give a fuck. You know, it's just, I used to give too much of a fuck when I was younger, and now I'm like, I am so the opposite.
Oh
but
man.
Even if I wasn't with my husband anymore, say something happened, like I would absolutely be single for the rest of my life. Like there's no doubt to me because I love being alone so much that if this doesn't work out, I'm good. I'm good with my own company.
So you're telling me that if you guys got divorced and a Lark Saltzman walked in the room and he said he wanted to marry you,
I'd be like, we can hang out. Like we can
hang out.
Like I'll come to your place, specifically, I will come to your place. So then when I'm done, I can leave whenever I want and know I'm going back to another place. But you can't come there.
That is the weird thing about having people over at your house because it's like you don't want to ask them to leave,
but I want you to leave.
But I want you to go. Yeah.
Like 9 o'clock is like the cutoff. Like, sorry, not sorry. Absolutely not.
9 o'clock is the cutoff. 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Spence, I have been with my husband for 15 years. Okay. Like, I don't go out. I don't do anything. I do. That's a lie.
I mean,
I don't do anything at night.
Don't get me wrong. I understand the cutoff. I just think 9 o'clock is crazy because then you're having sex before 9 o'clock. You're kicking him out the door, and then you're going to bed? I don't know.
I don't know. I'd have to think about it from a single point of view. Honestly, I don't think I'd even invite them over. I think I'd be like, nah, I just want to like do my little paint by numbers all night. I'm good. Enough for me.
For sure.
You know, good. I do need the companionship. But I mean, if Elijah or Klaus showed up at my door, I might reconsider. I might.
Yeah, that'd be a different story.
But like, my point is, it would take a lot.
Yeah.
It would take a lot to get me to be like, no, I don't want to be home alone.
Right.
The
Right.
older I get, the more alone I want to be.
I know. Even me, I'm currently single. What's up, ladies? I'm currently single, and I'm like, I'm like, I really like my alone time.
Yes.
I haven't even been like trying that hard because I'm like, I kind of like my alone time. Like, I don't know.
I never intended to like seriously date. My family used to make fun of me because I never had a boyfriend. And I will never forget once I was probably like 16 or 17, probably 17. I was in high school, late stages, and my mom sat me down on the couch and she went, Sam, if you're a lesbian, you can tell me it's okay. And dude, Spence, I fucking died. I went, first of all, like, I play for both teams regardless, but it is not for lack of, hiding. I'm not
Right.
trying to hide my sexuality. That is not the reason that I have not dated anyone. It is because I do not want to answer to anyone. I don't want to answer to
Right.
anyone. I want to do what I want to do, and then I can go home to my own place at the end of every night.
Right.
Is
Right.
that too
Right.
much to
Right.
ask for?
No, I think everybody's got their own thing. I would much at this point in my life, I would much prefer to be in a marriage, but um I mean, I definitely get the desire to have your own space, and like if and when I do get married, I would certainly need like an office room or something that I can retreat to, because I could not some of these, when I was renting out my other room here, I put a posting on like Facebook Marketplace or whatever, and I was like, room for rent, looking for, a roommate. Dude, I shit you not, at least 6 couples hit me up and be like, hey, we're a married couple, we're looking for a room to rent. And I was like, first of all, no, because that is undoubtedly going to get turned into drama that I don't need. But also, like, why would you want that? Like, why would you want to just rent a room? You're stuck in that room with another person for, the lease is a year. I just don't get it. I couldn't
I
do
would
it.
have to think it would be as if my husband and I had never had children, and he works retail, so he's days, nights, weekends. The earliest he gets home is like 6:30 on any given night. But then you're like kind of like sequestered to your room. Like
Yeah.
me and Michael would be like best case scenario because like we just want to like sit and like smoke our
Yeah, you could say that on YouTube.
we
Yeah.
just want to sit and smoke our weed and like chill. Like we are the most non-confrontational people, like as a couple together. And like that's why I
That's
always
good.
joke about it. I go, why did my husband have to fucking find me, man? Like he's perfect
Yeah.
for me. You know what I mean? God
Well,
damn it. Why did
that's
this
good.
perfect person have to find me? Where we are just so content and we have maybe one blowout fight like a year, maybe. If not like every 2 years. But
Sure.
we really are like the puzzle pieces. And
Right. That's
which
good.
is another reason why I feel like I was always so opposed in a lot of ways to people finding their perfect couple, is because I had parents growing up who were not meant to be together. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
And so
for
I
sure.
constantly had in my face this couple that was trying to make it work, that was just not right for each other. And I
Yeah.
was like, that's not going to be me. And then I found this man who I fucking love that man so much, and I am not trying to, like, praise anyone, like, I fucking love my husband. Our
That's
love
good.
languages perfectly match up with each other, like, and
That's
he
great.
loves me because I'm the funniest bitch you are ever gonna meet, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And I love him because he also loves to run errands, and I don't like to leave my house, you know what I mean? Like, it works.
Is that do you think that's why you're a Damon supporter? Because it's just different than the Stefan
I
relationship
think
that you kind of have?
Yeah, I think Damon would be like, "What can I do to solve your problem?" Where Stefan would be like, "Let's analyze this. Why do you feel this way?" And I'd be like, "No."
No, I
Oh,
think I think Stefan. No, 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 no. I think Stefan is the one that's like, let's how can we solve it in like a healthy way? And Damon's like, let's just forget about it and get like drunk on blood and like go party.
I would look at it as more like Damon is going to be like, I'm going to solve this problem for you, where Stefan is like, let's solve this together.
I still think that Stefan, he excludes Elena from a lot of the, like, if it were up to Stefan, Elena would be like at her house protected by her threshold, and Stefan would
But
be
without
going
her
and solving the
knowing.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I want to know, but I'm still going to let you solve my problem for me.
That's because I think Damon is kind of the opposite. He's always dragging Elena around with him. Like he's all like, besides a couple situations where he's like, this is too dangerous for you.
But
He's
that's
usually
important
like,
to Elena.
yeah,
She wants to be physically involved. And
right,
Damon gives that to her, where Stefan
right.
wants to protect her from it.
That was something in the earlier seasons where I was like, and congrats, we're back to Vampire Diaries. In the earlier seasons, Stefan, that killed you. Stefan
We literally said like, okay, we're gonna get back on track, and we immediately went
off track.
again.
Went way off the rails.
I love you. I fucking love you. You're
Oh
great.
man. That was one thing in the earlier seasons, or really in just the first season, where when Elena doesn't know that he's a vampire, and Stefan is like, he's like just straight up lying to her, like in every sense of the word, like just like bald faced lying to her. And I was like, oh wow, I don't remember Stefan being like so manipulative. Like it was for a good reason. Like I think he had his reasons, and I would personally agree with them and probably fall on his side. But at the same time, I was like, oh wow, no, that's a straight up lie. That's a straight up lie. That's a straight up lie. And it was kind of interesting to watch because that's not who Stefan is in my mind. And I think that once Elena finds out about him being a vampire, then it's like he's able to be like a lot more honest. But weren't those such a fun first few episodes where she's trying to figure out what he is? Those were some of the most fun episodes where it's like, oh, is she going to figure it out? Is she going to figure it out? And he's like trying to keep it secret, trying to do all these little things to like trying to keep her out of the loop. And she's just like, she's getting closer and closer and closer and closer. And then finally you get the episode where she shows up at his door and she says, "What are you?" And that's where the episode ends. And it's like, it's so good.
It was
Such
very
good,
like Twilight,
such good writing.
know? Like when Bella.
It was kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love those moments. And I think that's something that I love about, like, I mean, not that I really have any experience outside of Twilight and Vampire Diaries, but that's the part that I love, is the human figuring it all out and getting introduced to the supernatural world. And
Empire of the Vampire.
that moment. What's that?
Empire of the Vampire. It's kind of like that in a way, where Gabrielle was living his normal life, and then suddenly found out he was like half vampire and is thrust into this like world.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the best parts of, well, I don't know if that's true. That's a great part of that series, is when he's like growing up and figuring out all of the little like ins and outs of being a half vampire.
Yeah.
But I do love that moment where the human is just like they finally get to the breaking point where they can't be lied to anymore.
Yeah.
And they're just like, what are you? Like, I know you are something different. What are you? I love that moment. I live for that moment.
Well, then, if you have not seen True Blood yet, you will really fucking love that moment in True Blood.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch.
I'm also down to do a video.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I watched that at least like 8 times through.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that'll be interesting for a first time viewer. Do you know how many seasons it has?
What is there, like 6? Let me look it up.
Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad.
It's one of just like those shows that granted, I don't like necessarily love Sookie, who's like the main protagonist in all of it, but there's enough that goes on in the show. 7 seasons.
Okay, that's not bad.
But they're not like 23 episode seasons. They're like max 10 at most.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, I can do that.
But you will like it, and it would be really fun to compare. I thought something that was interesting in the video I was watching earlier where they were like, oh, like here's the vampire tropes that this series went with versus what other series go with, and how they talked about the daylight rings, which are super rare and valuable, but as soon as somebody in their group needs one, it's like very easy to
Yeah.
get one.
Right. Yeah. You just need a witch to make it for you. It's like, how have these vampires lived for like hundreds and hundreds of years and never known a witch who would make one of these for them?
Well, that's like when you get into the originals and the whole premise is like Marcel has taken over New Orleans, and the way he gets all these vampires to follow him is because after you've followed him for a certain number of years, he will grant you a daylight ring. So it's like a huge incentive for all of these vampires.
Right. Yeah.
But it's like you live in New Orleans with like the oldest witch covens that are available.
Yeah.
Why is
Couldn't
this
you just-
rare?
Yeah, unless I think in the New Orleans sense, those covens would probably like, because the vampires versus witches has been established for like hundreds of years throughout that city. I really doubt any of the witches would be willing to make one.
Oh, well, the whole thing is that Marcel has the whole city under his thumb, and witches can't do anything without him knowing. So
That's right.
They're effectively unable to do any witchcraft anymore, which, okay, I get it. But
I forgot about that. Yeah.
it seems like anytime anyone actually needs a ring, it's not that hard to actually whip it up. So it's just a little, there's a few little things where you're like, okay, well, this didn't make sense really. But with the whole scope of the storyline, and especially the way the show is branched out with the originals and legacy, is like they have been pretty good at keeping it contained to, like the world and the rules that are established.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Also, Marcel, what a good looking man. Holy shit.
I thought you were going to say what a great actor, and I was going to say, but he was a better looking man. Oh my God.
He was a good actor too.
Just like beautiful. The originals somehow keeps up just the fantastic, beautiful cast. It is.
Yeah.
There's no one that I'm like, ew, why did they pick this person?
Right. Yeah.
Every person.
Maybe
like,
Vicky. Maybe Vicky.
That I will give you, especially because the character she played, I'm almost like, did she play it too well? That I'm like, ew, you're kind of like, you were using Jeremy for drugs, like, okay, like, and then when you came back, she was whatever, but she's a beautiful girl in real life, you know what I mean?
Sure,
like, she's a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
But dude, the originals just like oh my God, Jackson from the originals. He is the werewolf guy that's like the other leader of the werewolf clan that Haley's not in. But no, look it up. You got to pull it up on the screen. You got to see what he looks like. Oh my God. He is the most beautiful human being ever. Spencer.
Okay, I'm going to share it.
Oh.
Yeah. I personally don't really see it, but if you think that women are really into this guy, I
imagine he's playing the Stefan of werewolves.
Yeah, I mean, I know who this character is. I remember him.
Oh, beautiful, just beautiful. And I mean,
Wait,
Haley.
does she end up getting married to him?
So they're both from these werewolf clans that, like, there was a prophecy that they were supposed to end up together and unite the two werewolf groups together.
Yeah.
And so while she just had Klaus's baby and there's all this stuff going on with her and Elijah, she makes the sacrifice, which I felt like was a very real sacrifice of like, listen, my heart may want this, but like, this is what's best for like everybody following me. And man, I have
Dude.
never had a harder decision to make between Elijah and Jackson. I mean, I don't know. I
Dude.
could make it.
Her and Elijah were such a good couple. I remember that.
But you got to see her and Jackson. I mean,
No, I think I saw that because I think that was before her and Elijah, right?
but it's like, no, it's after. Well, it's like
Oh.
mixed. It's very mixed because when she has Klaus's baby and she becomes this very important character in the originals, her and Elijah start to get really close. But then you find out she can break the curse of this other werewolf clan by marrying
Okay.
Jackson. But he's
Oh.
the sweetest, nicest guy ever. And all he wants is for her to be happy. And he doesn't care that she has a baby with freaking Klaus Michelson, who was
Yeah.
essentially the reason that they were all stuck in werewolf bodies for years and years and years.
Yes, I remember that. Okay, yeah. Yeah, because they couldn't transform back, right?
They were instead of being human 30 days a month and werewolf one day or
Right.
29 it was the opposite, and so they were werewolves all of the days, and then one day a month on the full moon they could be human again.
Right. I
And
remember
Haley
this.
was going to break that by bringing their two clans together.
So who does Klaus end up with at the end of the originals? Does he not end up with Haley?
He's really at first I wouldn't know, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, wasn't really in love with Haley, because he saw how Elijah was with Haley, so it wasn't really something he pursued in any way.
Okay.
He only really cared about her insofar as like she was carrying his child.
Right.
He really becomes in love with this woman Cammy in the originals, and she is probably the one character out of both shows, Vampire and the originals, that I fucking hate. I really hate her character. I can't fucking stand her. That's not her. Yeah. Her. Ugh.
Oh, I didn't mind this chick.
She was
I thought-
so annoying and self-righteous, and she was like the only character I couldn't get behind. I didn't hate her, but I did not like her.
Interesting. Okay,
I
I
didn't
don't
understand
maybe-
Klaus's obsession with her, and I felt like the writers were trying to
force
the
it.
Caroline role.
Right. Okay, I'd have to do a rewatch, but I do not remember disliking this character.
She's like the bartender who's also studying to be like a therapist, so she has all this
Yeah.
insightful info, and then she becomes a vampire, and just it's again like an Elena thing where like she like shut off her humanity or something maybe, and she just is so opposite of her normal character.
Yeah. This guy went on to be in a
Oh.
bunch of stuff. I don't know his name, but he went on to be in a bunch of movies and TV shows and
What was
stuff
his name?
after.
It's not Marcus.
Yeah, what is his name?
He was phenomenal. Hold on.
He was such a good actor.
He played up his role so well.
Yeah. I remember really, really liking him just because he was such a good actor.
Vincent. He played Vincent.
Yeah.
But dude, he was so passionate when he gave his, speeches, and his
Yeah.
backstory on why he was doing what he was doing made so much sense. Oh, he was in the Umbrella Academy.
Yeah. Yep.
Why did I forget that? That's one of my favorite shows.
Yeah, he's a good actor. I've seen him in a bunch of stuff after the originals.
Oh, he was in Good Omens.
Yep.
Wow. All right. Well, since we always take forever to do this, should we start trying to wrap up?
Yes, we should start to wrap up. Okay, so I'm gonna breeze through a few notes here. The music in this show is so good. It is like so amazing. I've made a playlist as I'm rewatching, the show. I used to have another playlist on my old YouTube account that I can't get into anymore, where I added music from the show. And it's so good I created a new playlist on my personal YouTube. It is linked in the description of this video. I'm going to keep adding songs to it as I hear ones that I like from the Vampire Diaries. Yeah, it is like there's some songs that are so good that have gone on to become some of my favorite songs. Like I have one song in the playlist that is actually from the originals. It's the Wailing Jenny's Longtime Traveler, and it's during I forget whose funeral it is. Um,
I think I hear it in my head, but
yeah, I'm a long time traveling here, a long time traveling away from. Anyway, it's dude, you look it up.
I did. I opened
And
Spotify immediately, and I was like, I want to hear it because I'm a big like music person. So
yeah. So what do you think of the music in this show? Because I like literally there are songs from this show that I still listen to this day.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. But it was when I watched that YouTube video that
Jenny Nichols.
Nichols, it really pointed out for me something I subconsciously been thinking until she said it. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Where they keep picking these songs that are the lyrics of the song exactly are saying
Yeah.
like adding the scene.
I remember
And
that, yeah.
semi noticed it on my own. I was like, oh, this is like a little too on the nose, where it's like, did you write this song for this?
Yeah.
But for the most part, like they have a lot of what is it, like One Republic and
Yeah.
other bands like that, which I really enjoyed. But there were
Yeah.
some times where I was like, the song you're
Yeah.
picking is just a little too. Did
Yeah.
AI pick the song for this?
Yeah. Dude, it's from like episode 4 or something, and it's the first time that you get the glimpse that Damon is in love with Elena.
Elena.
And he shows up, she's sleeping, and he shows up in her bed, or he shows up in her bedroom late at night. He's not in the bed, but he shows up in her bedroom, and he pushes her hair back from her face or something. He's just kind of sitting there looking at her. And then she like wakes up and he like flits away. And so she's like, "Oh, what was that? Oh, my window's open." She closes it. So that's the scene. But on your phone, look up Moby, and the song is called Temptation. And it's so good. It's literally like one of my favorite songs of all time. And a lot of these songs are like kind of like emo sad boy type songs, but that's the era I grew up in. You know what I mean? Like that's the era
Yeah.
that like I was in high school during the height of the emo thing.
Same.
And so a lot of these just like really just hit the nail on the head for me.
Oh, there
But
were quite a few. Quite a few.
yeah,
Yeah, there
Moby
was that like
Temptation is still one of
funeral
my favorite
scene.
songs to this day.
I'll have to look it up
Yeah.
later and send it to you. But there was one funeral scene. It's like one of the early ones. And whatever that song is, dude, every time I hear it, I just like want to start sobbing.
Right? Yeah. Was it when Grams died?
Grams is
Bon
True Blood.
No, Bonnie's grandma,
Oh, Bonnie's Grams? Maybe.
because that had a really good song too.
I
I
was
forget
almost
what it was.
thinking of Matt's sister.
Oh, Vicky, yeah.
Wait, sad funeral scene. The Vampire Diaries. Because it came up earlier, and I was like, "Oh, that's it."
Yeah. Yeah. There
Skinny Love.
Skinny Love. Yeah, I love that
Skinny
song.
Love, dude. That one, every time it plays, I just like immediately want to start
Oh,
sobbing.
it's such a good song. Whose funeral song is it?
I think it was fuck, was it Bonnie's? I don't know. I X'd out too quickly.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
But yeah, Skinny Love. Whose funeral is this? Maybe it's Rick's. I think it's gotta
Oh,
be Rick's. It's gotta be Rick's.
dude, Rick's death was awful, and or not like awful in like a bad way,
It
but just
destroyed
like
me.
it destroyed me. And I think it kind of did him a disservice that they kept bringing him back. Then there was like the evil Rick for a while.
Until they finally like brought him back. But like the thing that
Yeah.
killed me the most was that leading up to it, here are these like orphans, you know, and
Yeah.
they finally found this man who they can like trust and rely on. And
Yeah.
he was equally as hesitant in the way of like, I don't want to take over the room. Like, I'm fine on the couch, you know, but like they both needed each other. And
Yeah.
so all I hear is skinny love in my head right now over and over and over again. It makes me
Yeah.
want to cry. It really makes me want to cry.
It's so brutal. It's so brutal.
Yes.
And speaking of scenes that are a brutal kick to the balls is when Elena finally chooses Damon and she's in that room with like the fireplace and she's like he's like I'm not sorry that I love you or whatever, and she's like I'm not sorry either, and they start like making out and everything, and then the camera, it's like this whole dramatic scene, like it's this long thing, and then the camera pans up from them to like the next room right above them, and it's Stefan, and he's sitting there and he's like hearing all of this go on, and he's just like, oh my god. And then you see Lexi, his friend Lexi, who's like a ghost now, and she like shows up and she's like, it's gonna be okay. And he starts like packing his bags and he's gonna leave on a trip. And then like Lexi is with him in the car.
And she
Oh
just
man.
stares.
Yeah.
But Lexi did say I forget who it was, where she's like, Damon is the one that like challenges her and pushes
Yeah.
her, you know, and that always really stuck with me when it was
Yeah.
like the comparison of the two, where like one wants to kind of coddle you and the other wants to like experience it with you. And I guess like for
Yeah,
me,
I think that's probably the fairest way of putting it. I just think that like her and Stefan, I just think he was like the best guy. Like he was just like yeah, I definitely understand the appeal of Damon. Like I understand the
mhm.
pros and cons. It's just that Stefan, like Damon will always have like ulterior motives and he'll always be willing to play the riskier card, whereas Stefan, I almost call him Stamen, Stefan is just like undeniably devoted to Elena to whatever degree, even if it's like sacrificing himself. And God, I just think he's just the better
I think
pick
on
as like a
paper,
long term. What?
sure. I think on paper, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Like,
I think I would have picked Damon. I'm pretty positive I would have picked Damon.
because it's a tough spot, right? Because both of the brothers are extremely powerful. Both of them could protect you really, really well. Um, they're both like just very strong and able to think around various like supernatural threats and like get you out of harm's way. But then it comes down to like Damon. Like the way I see Damon is like he's super risky. Like he's super willing to put other people in danger in order to achieve his goals. Whereas
And
Stefan,
Stephenson.
yeah, he's like Stefan is like, I will protect everyone at the cost of myself. I will make sure everybody else is okay before I'm okay.
I think I look at it just more as like, if I had like killed someone in like a really horrific way, I know I could go to Damon and he would help me just like solve the problem without making me feel bad. And Stefan would be like, well, why
Mm.
did you do this? You know what I mean? Like, let's get into like the nitty
Yeah,
gritty. No,
does
just really clean
Stefan
up the body.
does Stefan ever do that though? Like, does he ever make Elena feel bad for drinking human blood and stuff?
Yeah, there's definitely the season where she turns off her humanity
Yeah,
and Stefan's in like his good guy era again. And
right.
he's all super pissed about her choosing Damon. He definitely does. But I mean,
Really?
in some ways, it's very. eh, What's the way I'm trying to say it? Like it's like allowed because like she shit on him so many times for his bloodlust.
Right. Yeah. I think yeah, by the time we get to season 4, there's so many like things that all of the characters have done to the other characters where it's like it's so there's no like, well, you did this, now I'm going to do this. It's so not convoluted because I don't think it's done in a bad way. But there's just so many like there's so many things that all of the characters have done where it's like, how do we hold anybody accountable anymore? You know what I mean?
I think it's very real in a sense where
Yeah, totally.
life is not black and white. Most of us are
Totally.
making gray decisions all of the time based off of how it's affecting us and how we are perceiving it in our past experiences. And so that's how I look at it, and I that's
Totally.
what I really appreciate about Vampire Diaries is nothing is black and white. There is not good guys, there is not bad guys. Every
Right.
single person is a gray area character, and that's what I love because you never know what to expect.
Yeah. Well, with that, let's talk about, as we get closer to wrapping up, let's talk about the ending. I kind of feel like they cut the balls off the ending a little bit, where it's
Well,
like there was a lot of stuff with like Elena not returning to the show because of her breakup with Ian Somerhalder and like in real life, like their
yeah,
real life
yeah.
relationship. Um, and it's kind of interesting. You can kind of tell in that last season where it's like, okay, we can get Elena back for one episode. Um, and I feel like it kind of got to this point where, we're hearing there's no way to revive Elena until Bonnie dies. And then all of a sudden, like, Bonnie's like, Elena wakes up, like, whatever it is, like 50 years later or whatever. And Bonnie's like, I just figured it out. Like, I got it to work. And it's like, that is the most unsatisfying explanation for a show that has so many, like, magical rules and stuff.
Mhm.
It's kind of unsatisfying to get Bonnie being just like, oh, I just reworked it and figured it out. It's like you couldn't have done that 50 years ago. Like,
Exactly. It took this long. It's just very convenient for the storyline
yeah,
of the show.
yeah. And I think, I will hand it to them. Like a show like this has got to be super difficult to end. It's got to be really, really tough to find a satisfying way to just like end the show.
Yeah.
So, I really don't hold it against them as much as I do with some other shows. There's other shows where I take a lot of offense to the way they ended it. And this one I feel like it wasn't terrible, but it definitely wasn't good. I feel like they just kind of cut the balls off the ending a little bit, I think.
I felt very much just that they played the hand they were dealt,
Yeah.
Elena left. What could they really do? She's only going to come back for one episode. And so I think they did okay. It
Yeah.
wasn't amazing, but at that point, you'd already gone through so many supernatural entities coming after everyone that it was kind of like what was left.
Yeah, and you saw the Jenny Nichols video where, I have it in my notes somewhere here where it's like every season it was just like here's the biggest bad guy, and then the next season it was like here's the next biggest bad guy. And Jenny Nichols talks about that in great detail where it's like you can't introduce every bad guy as the biggest and baddest bad guy. Like, it just doesn't work that way. It doesn't feel good for the audience.
Yeah, by
And
the end, it was like, here's the devil. And it was like,
yeah, here's the devil.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
One,
got it. Like, can't it just be like a bad guy? Why does it have to be like the ultimate end of town?
right. Can't it just be like another challenge? Why does
Yeah.
it have to be like the ultimate challenge?
That's why I feel like the originals does a lot better job of it's just like
Yeah,
here's challenge to challenge versus like here's the ultimate bad guy.
right. Yeah, exactly. And one area where I'll disagree with Jenny Nichols in her video is I really loved Kai. like the bad guy in the season where Damon and Bonnie go to that other
Yeah.
realm.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed him. I thought he was like sadistic and funny. He was like Damon on steroids. Like he was so much fun to watch. He was so much fun to watch. I loved him.
I agree with both sides. I agree with what she said, where she's like, "Oh, I feel like he should have been in Glee." Absolutely. But I think the
Is he
character he
not?
played,
Is he not the actor from? Is he not the
no, he's
actor from
not.
Pitch Perfect?
No,
Is
she
it?
looked it up. She said it in the video. He's not, he wasn't in any of them. And then she showed
Oh, it's
Ben, what's
funny.
his name, or, Book of
Yeah,
Mormon guy. But he, to me, was like, no, he is the ultimate theater kid. Like, he was
yeah,
playing the
yeah,
ultimate theater kid. Like,
yeah,
I get what you're saying, but to me, that's what made it.
yeah, for sure.
Like
Yeah,
the theater kid that you feel uneasy around because like they take their role so fucking seriously. God
yeah,
forbid you don't as well. So I actually thought he played that character really well as like the crazy guy who wanted to murder the twins and all of that bullshit.
yeah,
I loved it.
yeah. That was so like I know people really don't like that season. I've heard a lot of people talk about it, but for me personally, I just do not get it. Like I love that season so much, and it's this thing where it's like I think the reason I love that season so much is because the prior two seasons were so like
Much of
you
a
have the
slog.
yeah, like you have the college season where there's the guy that
Ugh,
like Damon was part of like this whole experiment. It's like,
I hate
okay,
that
that's
season.
yeah, it's like whatever. And then the next season, I think it's the next season where it's like the Gemini coven. That's
Hmm.
like the big next thing. And then you get Kai, who is just this out of his mind fucking wild bad guy
Hmm.
who just wants to see the world burn, and he's so funny, he's so charismatic.
Hmm.
God, I want to just go watch that season.
That's what I'm gonna do after
But
this.
he was such a good match for Damon in particular, where
Yeah.
they're both just like wild, like oh, it's so
Right,
good.
willing
It's
to
so
burn it all down, you know? It's
yeah.
great.
Oh, it's so good. Um, so yeah, the ending, we're like you were kind of iffy on the ending as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just when you come off of so many powerful seasons, I feel like it's always going to feel that way in a bit, you know? It
Yeah,
just is what it is. You've played your biggest hands, and there's only so many other things you can do. And while I think they did it well, I mean, it wasn't my favorite, but
yeah,
it is was when I was younger, I really loved the seasons where Elena was initially a vampire, and as an adult, I fucking hate them.
right.
They're the worst scenes to me, of the
Yeah,
seasons. And so it's really just about, I think, what stage of life you're in and how you can relate to everything, which is how you
right.
feel about it. But regardless, like, I love the show. I will continue to rewatch it.
For sure. Yeah, same. It's just like a comfort show to me. And even like doing this rewatch, I was kind of like, okay, the last time I watched this show, I was like 24 or something. Like, am I still gonna feel good about this show, or am I gonna find it extremely cringy now? And watching it at 32 years old, I can honestly say, like, and everybody who watches this podcast knows that I am a very harsh critic. You know that I have earned my reputation as somebody that like tears down bad stories and stuff. This is not one of them. Like at least the first like four seasons, like it does go off the rails. It does get like crazy and kind of eye rolly, and it certainly has its cringy moments, but so does the Night Angel trilogy, and that is one of my favorite series of all time. That has lots of cringy moments.
Hmm.
But like rewatching it this time, I was just me personally, I was shocked that I was like, this is still really good. Like this
Hmm.
is still like there are things that you can absolutely love about this series, and I just think like the writing at some points might be bad, but I would say a good 75% of the writing is
Mhm.
still really good. Like it
Yeah.
still holds up. It still makes me intrigued every single time an episode would end. There was that thing in me that was like, click the next episode. And
Yes.
I was telling Sam before the show, I was like, I last night I stayed up until I think it was like 3:30 in the morning watching the Vampire Diaries. I was even drinking coffee to like keep myself awake. Um, and the reason I did that was not just in preparation for the show for this episode. It was like every time I would get to the end of an episode, I had to click on to the next one because it leaves you on that perfect
Yeah.
cliffhanger that makes you want to click onto the next episode.
Yeah.
And
I
I think
miss
that's
that.
like the highest praise that I can give it. And
Yeah.
I think From is also doing that. From is a show that every time an episode ends, I want to click on to the next one. Um, and there's the few like diamonds in the rough, but man, this show just like makes me want to keep watching the next episode, next episode, next
Mhm.
episode. And I think, if you've never seen the Vampire Diaries before, I think it's one of those things that will like if you just give it a season, if you just give it one season, the characters and the acting will get their hooks in you so deep that you will look past everything else. Like
Mhm.
I truly believe that. I truly believe that if you watch the first season, you will get an understanding of who all these characters are
Mhm.
and they will become so beloved like Damon is
Yeah,
that
literally.
you'll just want to like keep going. You'll just want to
Yeah. Just
keep
trust
going.
us, okay?
Yeah, just trust us. What about okay, so we're gonna wrap up. Do you any of your notes? I know you added some notes to this doc. Do you have any ones that you didn't get to hit?
Not really, other than, like, I would hate to look 17 for the rest of my life. I think that's the only
Really?
thing we didn't touch it. Listen, did I look great at 17? Absolutely. I will admit that, but I've always looked super young for my age. At 17, I looked 13, maybe 14. I absolutely do not wanna be
Oh,
stuck at 17 for the rest of my life. I
yeah,
just got ID'd. I am 34. I
sure.
just got ID'd in the last year, for stuff.
Yeah, same.
At 17, I looked 14. Absolutely not. I do not wanna stay at that life age forever. No.
Right.
Give me 25. That would probably be, like, my prime.
Yeah,
25.
I think Damon's got the best deal, right? Like he
Yeah,
got turned when he was
25.
25, and
Mhm.
that's like I think that's the best I've ever looked. Like
That was always the thing with me on Twilight where it was like, "Oh, they all went to high school a million times." I'm like, "Why?
yeah,
You're
why
not
go
learning
back to high
anything."
school? Yeah.
I can understand,
I
like, going to college, getting different degrees, but, like,
yeah.
high school over and over? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I understand it for Stefan cuz he was specifically on a mission to get with Elena. But like for Edward, he didn't even know about Bella until he went to like why would you ever go back to high school?
No, and you're 100 and something, and, like, I am 35, about to be,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the idea of being your 17-year-old at all is just but
Horrifying.
in a romantic way?
Yeah.
No. No, what?
Do you think if you get changed into a vampire at 17, do you keep all of those like raging hormones like all the time?
Maybe. I mean, that'd be like 1 plus, I
That
guess, but
oh man, I would consider it hell. Like I am so much happier like with my body
yeah.
physiologically
Oh,
than
yeah,
I was at 17.
yeah. I am now like, "Oh my god, why was I such a psycho back then? Like, I had the best body of my fucking life. Like, what was wrong
Right.
with me?" But that's like a mentality thing, but if I could get that mentality while keeping my body from 17,
Right.
sure,
Yeah,
sure.
it's a fine trade-off. It's a fine trade-off.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Um, so I not going to go through all of these, obviously. We've actually talked about the majority of them. But I took notes on like every few episodes, every time I found something interesting. And as we lead out right now, I just want to mention that Catherine's first appearance is epic. We haven't even talked about Catherine as a character, but she was a great character until she wasn't. Like she eventually got like overused, and it kind of became this thing where it's like, all right, the nails kind of got filed off of Catherine Pierce.
She was like Damon if Damon never like learned his lesson.
Yeah, exactly. But her first introduction on screen where she like makes out with Damon and then goes into the house, and it's like Damon thinks that he's just made out with Elena, and then she like chops off John's fingers and like tries to kill him. Oh my God, it was such a good entrance. It was such a good like villain entrance. I think they could have used.
Appreciated her. I appreciated her throughout the storyline, but towards the end, I was like, all right, I'm done. Like, you have not.
Yeah, I'm done with
You
Catherine.
have not like made any moves to make yourself better. Like, And what she did to her daughter, that was when I was really like, oh, I'm done.
Yeah, yeah. I think they could have used Catherine to a much better effect. They could have like given her a really good story arc and made her part of like the main team, made her like a good guy, or just like a really bad guy that gets killed off. But I think that in the video I was watching this morning by Friendly Space Ninja, it's in the description if anyone wants to watch it. But he was saying it would have been so cool if they introduced Catherine and just made like a mind bender of an episode or of a season. And like you couldn't tell who was Elena and who was Catherine, and like going and sewing all of this like deceit and everything. That would have been so awesome, but they didn't really use her to that effect.
It would have been.
Season 2, episode 2 might have been the best episode that I've seen so far in my rewatch. I love it's where Stefan and Damon are just starting to become like brothers again. Like they're just starting to watch out for each other. There's this really funny quote where they're talking about the Lockwoods, and Damon says, "What is up with that family?" And Stefan says, "Maybe they're Ninja Turtles." And it just starts like this inside joke for the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I love the banter between the two of them. Both of these actors have such great chemistry as brothers. It's so good. I love when Damon calls all of this from season 2, episode 2. They're like talking about Catherine, and Damon and Ian Somerhalder delivers this line 1,000 times better than I ever will. But they're talking about Catherine, and he says, "It's because she's a lying, manipulative little slut." And just like the way he says it is so like funny. I don't know how to describe it, but she's a lying, manipulative little slut. And he says it like so casually and so like just like off the cuff. It comes off like so cool and collected. I don't know. I love it.
It's in like Damon's like speak of like just explaining things away, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I get it.
And then Stefan helping Caroline when she first becomes a vampire, and they're in the bathroom, and she's like sobbing, and her eyes keep going into like vampire mode, and he's like, "It's gonna be okay. Like just relax." And he's there like helping her. That was one of the sweetest scenes of the entire show. Like I love that moment so much.
I like when they get together. I was very satisfied with that. Very satisfied.
Yeah, I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. And I think that this scene kind of shows that while Damon's only concern is for Elena, Stefan is concerned for Elena, but he's also very invested in everybody else as well.
Yeah.
And so it's this scene where he's like, it's kind of the first moment where you really see, okay, so Stefan, he's not only going to protect Elena, he's going to protect her friends as well.
Yeah.
And that was great. And then Stefan waking up Elena in the middle of the night, because at the beginning of the episode, they had been like, "I just want to have this day where nothing bad happens, and we go on the Ferris wheel and you kiss me at the top and all this stuff." And none of that happens. It all goes to shit.
Yeah.
And then Stefan wakes her up at like 2 a.m. and he's like, come with me. And he like takes her to the Ferris wheel and she like holds onto him and he like jumps all the way up to the Ferris
Yeah.
wheel. And they have a moment up there. I'm like, that was a good moment. Those are the romantic moments that I really root for. I really root for those. I'm not sure where in season 2 it is, but I love the scene where Damon, Rose shows up in season 2
Mhm.
and she
He brings her
dies
into
from like a wolf bite and she's like dying a really horrific death and Damon uses his mind powers to give her like a dream of the two of them just like sitting on this hillside as humans in the 1500s and just enjoying the next few minutes. Like I love this is kind of where you start to see Damon as like a person, as like a person who cares about things.
Mhm.
And he's willing to give her this moment of peace and like I'm just gonna hold you while we sit on this hillside
Yeah.
while you die.
Yeah,
And so
it's great later when they ask about, like, people from the other side coming over, and Rose is like they, like, ask her, like, "How will we know you're Rose?" or something, and she's like, "Oh, well, on my last day, I was in this, like, beautiful field and
yeah,
blah, blah, blah," and Elena's like, "I was with her, she was not," and Damon's like, "No, like, that's what I
that's
did for
her.
her in her mind." That was really sweet. Mm.
It's so good. It's so
Yeah.
good.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I think that's really it as far as like notes and stuff
Yeah.
that I have. There's so many good Damon quotes that I wish I had written down. But there's so many more to come in the seasons that
Mhm.
I'm rewatching. Um so yeah, I'm glad that we got to chat
Yeah.
about this. Um, and I'm looking at your notes and I'm seeing everything you talked about. Like,
Yeah.
it would suck being 17 forever.
Like I said, it
Uh,
was all, like, as I was watching, I, like, spoke into my phone to, like, have it
sure.
be put
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Oh my God. I forgot that there's a season about the devil. That's so funny.
There's a season
Um,
about the devil, there is.
yeah. And then we didn't even talk about the humanity switch that you have here in your notes. That's a whole nother another. Did you like those seasons where characters would switch off their humanity?
No, but, like, at the
Really?
same time, I did appreciate it as a plot line, you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
didn't like it, but I appreciated it, so I was fine with it because it made sense for the storyline, and if you're shutting your feelings off, like, yeah, people are not gonna give a fuck what you feel, you know? So, like, they're
Right.
gonna act in their own interests, so while it might have been annoying for someone like Elena, who's such a goody-goody, to suddenly have, like, all of this just like, "Fuck it, I'm only doing shit for me" attitude, like, it was great for the storyline.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I really liked the times where they would shut off their humanity because it was
Mhm.
always it was the thing that they had in their back pocket, the writers. It was the thing they had in their back pocket that if things were starting to get a little bit stale, they could make somebody switch off their humanity and everything
Mhm.
would get crazy. And I really appreciated that as a plot device. But
Yeah. Yeah, it
yeah.
was great. It was a really, like, simple in a way, way
Yeah,
to really change the plot line of the show.
right. Well, Sam, thank you so much for hanging out with me and talking about the Vampire Diaries. I think this show it's just so interesting for me especially. I'm just like I should not like this show as much as I do. But I really love it. I genuinely think at least the first 3 seasons
Mhm.
are really good writing, really good
Mhm.
acting, really good like filming. Even the cinematography and everything was really, really good.
The
Um,
music,
the
it's all great.
music, yeah, it's really fantastic, and uh, I think this show probably gets a lot of shit just because of Twilight because it's so like similar. But I think if people were to kind of like set aside their preconceived notions, or like even if you're willing to like endure a little bit of cringe for what is otherwise a really good show, um, I think that would be awesome. I think more people would really like it. Not that this doesn't already have like a massive following, but for people that aren't usually interested in this kind of stuff, I really think that if you can just set aside your just
Prejudices.
yeah prejudices, but also like there's a level of cringe, like even reading
Preconceived
like
notions.
yeah, exactly. Like I think if you can set all of that aside and just focus on like the story and like what it's doing, it'll hook you. It
If you like
really
True Blood,
really
there's
will.
no reason you shouldn't like the Vampire Diaries.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to watch True Blood because that was something like Vampire Diaries was kind of my thing for like a long time. And I never really branched off into other shows because I was like I want everything to be like Vampire Diaries. But now that I'm older, I'm like, all right, I'll give True Blood a chance and see what it
Yeah.
does with its vampires.
I
So,
would say the only difference is Vampire Diaries gives a lot of the side characters so much room to grow and so much of
yeah.
a storyline, where True Blood kind of pretty much sticks to its main plot line.
Yeah,
The
is
only major difference.
because True Blood was kind of around the same time as Buffy,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So they're
No, True
probably
Blood was around the same time as Vampire Diaries.
really.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought
because it was HBO, so it seems like it's different. True Blood was 2007.
oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. That changes a lot. So yeah,
And Vampire Diaries was 2009. It was right before.
wow.
They
Okay.
overlapped.
Interesting. And do you think that True Blood, does it lean into the romance or does it lean
Oh,
the other way?
that's like the main plot line
Is the romance?
is the romance.
Okay. Okay.
It has really fucking cool and interesting stuff that it like delves into and whatnot. Like, if we as the United States decided that like vampirism was like fine, we knew about it, like it's okay. Here's this like
Mm,
synthetic blood they can drink, like nobody should be worried. What would happen to America?
mm,
That's what True Blood is.
right. Okay.
It's
Interesting.
really interesting.
Okay. Cool. I'm excited to check it out. I'm excited to catch up on the shows that I've missed over the past couple weeks,
Yeah.
and then go back to Vampire Diaries and then check out True Blood at some point. You and I will have to talk about the originals,
Yes.
because I did make it to the point in the originals when the baby was born. And so I think there's only a couple seasons after that, right?
There's like how many seasons? Are there 4 seasons of the originals?
It's more than
But
that.
I've said before, I like the originals better than Vampire Diaries. Oh, and I really think it does. There's 5 seasons. I think it
Okay.
really comes down to that you get a lot more backstory from the originals, who I was very intrigued with in the Vampire Diaries, and I feel like we did not get enough of their
Sure.
backstory. And again, they're not trying to pretend to be high schoolers.
Right.
And that makes all the difference. So, yeah, I'll be excited to talk about that.
Cool. Yeah, we'll plan that out. We'll do something for True Blood in the future, and we'll think of some other fun shows that I'm sure we have a lot of
Oh,
overlap of shows that we've
absolutely.
watched. So we'll have to do this more often because this was
Yeah,
really really
this
fun.
was really fun.
Yeah, kind of reminiscing and
Yeah,
yeah.
I loved it.
Cool. So thank you, Sam. Thank you, everybody that has made it this far in the video. You are all amazing. Our next live stream will probably be our Christmas live stream, unless we think of something fun to do
I thought we
in
were
the
doing Harry
meantime.
Potter next weekend.
Yeah, but that's not a live stream for everybody. That's
Got
like
it.
an episode we record. Um, So our next, I think our next big live stream will be the Christmas one, unless we can think of anything super fun to do in the meantime. And that'll be on December 22nd, from what I understand. I'm not sure what time yet, probably like midday, like our usual time. And we'll be talking about our favorite books from the year, our favorite TV shows, favorite games, all that kind of stuff. Our favorite, or not favorite, but our like biggest disappointments of the year. So join us for that, and that'll be a ton of fun, and that'll be a good wrap up to the end of the year. But thank you all for watching. Links to everything is in our description, links to our socials, the Jenny Nichols videos, the friendly Space Ninja video that are really worth watching. And then, of course, our Patreon, where you can support us financially, but also you can get access to our episodes live as we record them. You can join us just as if it were a live stream, and you can chat with us while we talk about whatever book or whatever. So that's always really worth it. And then, yeah, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next time. I wish I had some quippy outro for you, but I don't. Bye.